Chapter 1900. Linsen was very distressed because he had broken his promise. He had promised Liu Xiaoyi to leave Daequi in the sphere of influence of Exquisite Star. However, he had returned in less than 2 hours. This made him feel very embarrassed. His desire for life made him fly here because he knew that this was his only hope of survival. He didn't know if the vicious man would attack him or not. But in this short contact, from this vicious man's unruly behavior, he saw a trace of honesty and uprightness that was not faked. This was also the reason why he was willing to come here and try his luck. The battle had already begun before he even entered the Linglong satellite cluster. The intense magical waves were transmitted through the cluster of satellites, and it was inevitable that many of them would be affected. However, this kind of effect was not harmful to ordinary people after being buffered by the atmosphere. They only felt that it was strange. Why would there be thunder in the middle of the day? However, this kind of movement could not be hidden from real great cultivators, such as the two on the Tsang Mountain in the Exquisite World. Linsen fought as he fled. He couldn't fight head-on. Although he was brave, it was exactly what the enemy wanted. The only direction the three geniuses of the exterior were blocking him was the direction of Linglong. Although they looked down on this so-called neutral world, they still had to be careful at the very least. It would be troublesome if they provoked the indigenous cultivators. It was better to just block him in this direction and fly in all other directions. However, Linsen's main direction was not the Exquisite World but Daequi Star. In terms of probability, with the vicious man's lecherous behavior, he wouldn't leave so soon, right? No matter what, he had to accompany the fairies on the planet to repair the wood spirit, right? He was disappointed. He struggled desperately to reach Daequi Star, but he didn't see that person. He only felt 7 weak breaths. They were the 7 fairies of the Nature Conservation Association. It was obvious that the swordsman and the 2 exquisite sun spirits secretly following him had left. It was also the will of heaven. Since he couldn't run, he could only fight for his life on Daequi Star. At least the wood spirit here was the largest in the satellite group and could provide him with the greatest support, even if such support could not help him defeat the enemy. Liu Su and her sisters were conducting a field survey on planet Stack Jade. They were not young gods and half-immortals, so they could tell where the problem was with their divine awareness. However, they were not strong enough. Their cultivation was not high enough, so they could only measure the damage of the forest vegetation piece by piece. When they understood the overall situation of planet Stack Jade, they would come up with a plan. Of course, the duration would not be too long. The subsequent restoration was both a punishment and a form of training. For cultivators, it was difficult to distinguish between the two. Just as the few of them spread out to investigate, spiritual vigor came rolling in from the sky. The spiritual vigor of the entire planet Stack Jade became chaotic and became more and more intense. It was getting closer and closer. In a hurry, the sisters gathered together. They didn't know what had happened, but no matter how slow they were, they knew that such a mess wasn't something they could get involved in. Therefore, he was also hesitating. Should he go out and take a look? Or stay in the inner realm and wait for the storm to pass? This kind of battle was clearly at the level of a true monarch, and it was very likely that it was at the highest level of a true monarch. Just the aftermath of the battle was enough to shatter Dai Chui's spiritual vigor. However, this kind of battle would not enter the inner realm. This was the rule. Just as they were hesitating, a figure fell from the sky like a meteor, smashing a large hole in the forest. Although the process was very short, they could still see that the person who fell was the evil wood spirit who had left before. Huangli stuck out her tongue and guessed, could it be that the ancestors of the family made a move? This was the most realistic guess. They just didn't know why the ancestors would make a move at such a time. Was there any meaning to it? However, the reality immediately turned their guesses into nonsense. 3 unfamiliar cultivators suddenly appeared in the atmosphere. They were high above, but they covered the forest. Clearly, they did not intend to leave the matter at that. Linsen, who had fallen into the forest, crawled up. Where was the demeanor of a half-immortal? He was a stubborn person, and he was not used to waiting for death. After taking a breath, he used the Great Wood Spirit technique. He wanted to seize all the wood spirit energy on this planet and obtain the wood spirit body of that big tree from back then. This was his final struggle. Clearly, the three opponents knew what he was doing and did not stop him. It was like a cat playing with a mouse, deliberately teasing him. In fact, they wanted to see if there was a possibility that he would voluntarily hand over the item while he was still alive. If a half-immortal really wanted to destroy everything, it was possible that the item would be destroyed. Even if they thought that the possibility was not high, just in case, they should try peaceful means before resorting to force, right? The entire forest was withering at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was not only this forest, but also all the remaining vegetation on Dai Chui Star. Before long, this kind of action would cause Dai Chui Star to become a desolate planet, and it would be an irreversible situation. The protectors of nature saw this and became anxious in their hearts. They knew that they did not have the ability to stop this kind of battle, but at least they could still speak. People with faith were sometimes so brainless, but in a sense, they were also stubborn and cute. They did not think about the possible consequences at all. In this kind of battle, they would lose their lives. Just for the persistence in their hearts. People with ideals and beliefs were always respected. Master, you promised us that you would not touch the Dai Chui Wood Spirit. The promise is still in our ears. Are you going to break your own promise? Small cultivators like us know that promises are worth 1,000 gold. Life and death are not worth it. You have such a high realm and cultivation, could it be that you are inferior to a few Yuanian girls? The three evildoers of the exterior looked funny. They were not in a hurry. This kind of episode was very good. It could reduce the people's will to die, and it was beneficial for them to obtain the item. Linson was mad with anger. These reckless female cultivators only knew how to be wishy-washy all day long. Did they not see that he was now at the critical moment of life and death? If he did not fight for his life, how could he be lucky? How could he still consider so many things? He had to force himself to improve the spirit and continue to evolve. However, the 7 female cultivators lined up in front of him. That kind of stubbornness made it difficult for even a person with a heart of stone like him to look straight at. He was in a dilemma in his heart and could not make a decision. After a long time, the bottom line in his heart finally worked. This was actually his character. Deep down, he was a person who abided by the rules and believed in promises. With a long sigh, he gave up on the spirit extraction. The green mountain finally stopped withering at the edge of danger. The 7 women were greatly encouraged. They used their own persistence to win a popular victory. But this was not the end. They faced the 3 unfamiliar cultivators in the sky. Killing people is just a matter of nodding your head to the ground. Why do you have to disgrace your life and go to the West? We are cultivators of the exquisite world. We are the hosts. Can you 2 sit down and have a good talk? It's better than fighting and killing like this. The leading cultivator smiled. Okay. We still have to give face to the master. But since you want to talk about peace, you should at least have the same realm, right? The 4 of us are from the exterior realm. How about this? Your exquisite world also has an exterior realm cultivator. We will listen to you and sit down to talk. Lu Su and the others were dumbfounded. The exterior realm was a place where only half-immortals could stay. It turned out that they were actually 4 half-immortals. No wonder they were so powerful when they fought. However, where could the exquisite world find half-immortals? There had never been one since the establishment of the realm. The unfamiliar cultivator smiled. If you want to mediate and make peace, you have to have the ability to do so. It's not something that can be done with just words. We have a total of 3 half-immortals. Since your exquisite world calls itself the upper world, you should be able to bring out 3 half-immortals, right? While his words were still ringing in their ears, a sword light slashed down from the sky. One of the evildoers was instantly killed. Then, a faint voice sounded. Now there are two. I heard that you are particular about equality. So I want to talk to you. Am I not qualified? Chapter 1901. This sneak attack was fast, accurate, and ruthless. The remaining two evildoers were horrified and split up. However, the owner of the voice was not interested in talking. Or did he think that the number of people was not equal? In the midst of flying shadows, the Tau state changed first. The two exterior evildoers knew that now was not the time to rush out of the atmosphere and escape into the void. There would be a momentary gap in their defense before they pulled up and broke through the restraint of gravity. Normal people might not be able to catch it, but this swordsman could. Both of them felt the pressure in front of them was as heavy as a mountain. The flying swords were as dense as rain, testing the limits of their defense. These were two rivers of swords, attacking separately. Under the control of the owner, they were constantly evolving into completely different Tau states. Everyone's adaptability was exposed incisively and vividly in the blink of an eye. Everyone was good at fighting. A sudden attack like this was the most exciting way. The swordsman liked it, but other orthodoxies might not. Lu Xiaoyi was already well aware of the two's abilities as one retreated and the other advanced. Just as the two were about to launch a counterattack, the flying swords that filled the sky gathered and cut one of them into two. The last one did not dare to move in fear, but intentionally or unintentionally, he moved in front of the 7 fairies who were already stunned. Lu Xiaoyi played it down. So, are we equal now? Can we talk? The evildoer's mind was spinning. He was considering the possibility of admitting defeat. Could he escape from the owner's evil hands? Or, was it better to control one's own fate? Guessing his thoughts, Lu Xiaoyi gave him a chance. You want to take hostages? You'd better think it through. My specialty is to be equal, not to save people. Doing things that don't suit your status as a half-immortal will only bring trouble to your home planet, just like the Hengi realm. I'll let you escape from the void, and then we'll see what happens. Think about it yourself, I don't have much patience. The evildoer was struggling in his heart. Because he was finally sure who this person was. After chasing for so long, he did not expect to come to this malefic's territory. If others threatened him that they would go to his home planet and kill him if they dared to kill the hostages, he would kill these female cultivators without hesitation. Who are they trying to scare? But if it's a threat from this person, you can't treat it lightly. Because this person had just led a group of people to destroy a top-tier powerful world in the universe. With the ability that this person had just displayed, not to mention gathering people to destroy a realm, even if a person went over alone, his realm would be destroyed. The choice wasn't difficult to make. As long as he could get out of the atmosphere, he would be able to find a way to escape without fighting for his life. Once he had made up his mind, he turned around and left. He knew that the words of such a person must be true. There was no need to think about things anymore. The only problem now was his life. As he slowly pulled upwards, he regretted it. Why did he come to this place? In everyone's eyes, the strange half-immortal didn't dare to say anything and left planet Stack Jade with his tail between his legs. After several breaths, the stranger also disappeared without a trace. It was obvious that he was going to eliminate the source of trouble and silence the witness. The fairies still didn't dare to follow him out. Even if they did, it would be useless. They wouldn't be able to learn anything. The difference in their cultivation levels was too great. They wouldn't be able to understand, and they might even cause trouble for others for no reason. They also needed to be qualified to watch the show. The 7 of them were a little confused by this sudden change, but then they heard a voice coming from the side. Thank you. Thank you fairies for saving my life. Linson has nothing to repay you with. As long as the Stack Jadewood spirit doesn't recover, I won't leave. Only then did the fairies realize that there was still a living person beside them. Lu Su said gently, you don't have to thank us. It wasn't us who saved you. I think it was you who took pity on the wood spirit and retreated. That's why you have this blessing today. Monk Lin's face was ashen. He said bluntly, What blessing! I was forced to retreat last time. With this person here, do you think I dare to stay here? I was just putting on a show to save myself some face. It was you who saved me. Because you asked me not to act rashly and the wood spirit fought back. I listened to you, and that's why he saved me. I didn't listen to you. He would only deal with the 3 half-immortals after I died. So when I said that you saved me, it's not wrong. The 7 fairies were dumbfounded. Actually, it was very reasonable. It was just that the contrast between that unreliable person and them was too big. Huang Li was a little confused. We are all half-immortals, why are you so afraid of him? Who is he? He doesn't seem to be that great. Linson smiled awkwardly. Who is he? If he doesn't say it himself, I can't tell you. He is very great, but that's only to us half-immortals. It's meaningless to you. Huang Li patted her chest. Everything that happened in this short period of time made them frightened. Faith was very important, but the fear after faith was real. I think his temper is very good. He doesn't seem to be very fierce. Linson laughed loudly, which affected his internal injuries. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. It was very sinister. Of course his temper is very good to you, because he wants to sleep with you. Linson finally understood the swordsman's temper a little. He didn't have to do anything deliberately, he just had to be himself. The swordsman killed people like flies, but he had a bottom line. Fortunately, his bottom line was similar to Lin Sen's, which was why he could survive. He was not as bloodthirsty and cruel as the outside world said. The fairies were a little unnatural. Of course, they knew that the dying Taoist's words made some sense. Along the way, some things were also very obvious. They thought that it was a toad who wanted to eat swan meat, but now it was an immortal who wanted to eat swan meat. You have already reached such a realm, haven't you eaten swan meat? In order to avoid embarrassment, Liu Su changed the topic. Is there anything we can help with the injury of the exalted immortal? If you really need the help of the wood spirits, there are actually many planets in the exquisite world, and many of them are lush with wood spirits. You can go to a few more planets. As long as you ensure that the foundation of each planet is not affected, it's not impossible to just take a few portions. They were very smart. Since they knew that these people were in the exterior realm, they naturally understood why the sect had not taken action. Now, they were taking advantage of this person's injury to get closer to him. It was also a contribution to the realm. Of course, if they wanted to get closer to him, it was more meaningful to get another person. However, they were the Nature Protection Association, not the Brothel Workers' Rights Association. They couldn't agree to the swordsman's request. It was a very honorable thing to find a half-immortal as a Taoist companion. Of course, it was also very meaningful. However, for Yuanying, who had cultivated for hundreds of years, some principles were not difficult to understand. When the gap between the two parties was too big and they couldn't help each other, such a Taoist companion relationship would be very fragile. He was just a half-immortal with a strange personality and some bad habits. After all, he was just a passerby to them. Chapter 1902. The swordsman came back faster than they had imagined. It was as if he had just gone out to kill a void beast. No one asked for the result. The fact that he could come back so quickly and with such a relaxed expression on his face was enough to prove something. Little sisters, you are really brave. I admire you. Lu Xiaoyi was not embarrassed at all. Did he need to feel guilty for liking beautiful things? Liu Su and the others were very embarrassed. Exalted immortal, isn't it inappropriate for you to call us that? You are more than twice our age. If you call us that, our lifespan will be shortened. Lu Xiaoyi continued to be shameless. It's appropriate, it's too appropriate. In my hometown, all adult female cultivators are called little sisters. It has nothing to do with age. It's just a habit. A habit with ulterior motives? The fairies complained in their hearts, but they did not dare to refute. If he was willing to call them big sisters, then so be it. Even if he called them aunties, what else could they say? Look here. Lu Xiaoyi waved his hand. Do what you are supposed to do. It's not a problem. As for the problem of the wood spirit's recovery, whoever caused it will solve it. This is the rule. He looked at Lin Sr. Are you okay? Linson smiled bitterly. No problem. I won't leave until Daichui is restored to its former glory. But it might take a little longer. It's not convenient for me to do it now. Looking at his situation, it was very bad. However, Lu Xiaoyi did not have a good solution for this kind of situation. He was not good at this. What he was good at was, in front of Linsen and the fairies, he took out a cloth bag and poured it out without any hesitation. Instantly, everyone was blinded. Hundreds of storage rings were densely packed together. It looked really shocking. What happened next was even more shocking. These storage rings were open at the same time. Instantly, the world was filled with Dao light and treasure qi. Countless artifacts, most of which were items that the fairies had never seen or heard of before. Dao artifacts, treasured artifacts, talismans, great medicine, natural treasures. It was as if an open-air treasure warehouse had appeared out of thin air. These things are a little messy. I don't have time to organize them. You can pick and see if there's anything that can help you. I'm not doing you a favor. The sooner you recover from your injuries, the sooner you can get back to work. Otherwise, who would have the patience to waste hundreds of years on this little bit of wood spirit? Just by looking at the format of the storage rings, one could tell that they came from different orthodoxies, not to mention the things inside. There were all kinds of Taoism, Buddhism, and other orthodoxies. It was a dazzling array that was too much to take in. It was truly rare for a bandit to be able to do this. The exquisite realm had never lacked heavenly materials and earthly treasures, but there weren't many who were this wealthy. Linson did not stand on ceremony. He had already gotten a feel for this swordsman's temper. If he owed him too much, it was only a matter of time before he lost his life. It did not matter if he thought it through. He picked 3 items that were related to its spirits and would be of great help to him. With the help of these things, I can begin to restore the stacked verdant environment within a year, a small recovery in 10 years, and a full recovery in 30 years. Please rest assured. Lu Xiaoyi looked at the fairies with a smile. Since we've bumped into each other, it must be fate. My purpose here is to have a chat with Lord Linglong. We can barely be considered as a family, so I'll take a few items that I like as a greeting gift. The fairies laughed and laughed. It was not that they were short-sighted, but since he was a friend of their ancestor, Lord Linglong, he was also their senior, although this senior had the bad habit of eating young grass. But a senior was still a senior, so it was not too much to take his items. In the cultivation world, connections were very important. The key was not whether the items were good or bad, but to use it to hug a thick thigh, who knew when it would be useful in the future. They were not greedy, and each of them took 1 item, each taking what they liked. In this aspect, the exquisite realm's cultivators were very good and would not be jealous. Of course, there were many items that they could not even tell if they were good or bad. After the fairies dispersed, Linson began a conversation that was exclusive to half-immortals. I, Lord Lu, dare not forget your kindness. My words are too light, but they are useful. I'll pay you back with my life. But if it involves the mother planet, please forgive me. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. You're thinking too much. I only saved you because of fate, and I don't need to be greedy for your repayment. As for your mother planet, I'm not interested. Do you think it's that easy to destroy a world? It's enough to have Henghe in this lifetime. I'm not interested in getting the next one since he already has a bad reputation that makes people wary. Linson laughed. In fact, when they really got to know each other, this swordsman was also very straightforward. He liked friends like this, who were not pretentious and directly asked for things without beating around the bush. This made people feel relaxed and did not have to keep this matter in mind. But no matter what, because of this big favor, there were still some things that needed to be said. At the very least, he could not let Linson encounter something related to this matter without knowing the reason and make a wrong judgment. One of the three exterior monsters came from the southern heaven, and the other two came from the western heaven. They did not belong to each other. They met in the exterior realm and gathered together for a special purpose. Lord Lu, I don't know if today's killing will be related to this in the future, but it's best that Lord Lu knows these so-called secrets. If you really encounter them, you'll have a way to deal with them. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. There are circles everywhere. The interior realm has it, so I guess the exterior realm is the same. Once you get into trouble, it won't end. In fact, Lu Xiaoyi had been following these three exterior monsters during the chase. To him, it did not make much of a difference whether he helped them or not. The key was to drive them away from the surrounding airspace of the exquisite world. But during the chase, he found that these three people were somewhat indifferent to the surrounding environment of the star region. For example, when casting spells in battle, would they give up some good opportunities to attack because they were afraid of the humans in the star region? And strictly control the power of their attacks? This was a very subtle habit of fighting. From this, one could also see a cultivator's character. Linson had a very bottom line in this regard. He always flew around the stars. The reason why he flew to Daequi was that he hoped that Linson would help. This kind of thinking was normal and not excessive. But the three monsters were far inferior to him in this regard. It was not to say that they had hurt a mortal, but under such a habit, if their situation was really bad to a certain extent, they would not be able to maintain a certain bottom line like Lin's senator. This was actually the reason why he chose to help them. Of course, if he helped these three people, he would not end up well. Maybe when he drove them away, he would still have to use his fists to win. Walking in the void of the universe, such things were not rare. He could not always not kill one person. But if he had the heart, he could always choose the behavior that was most in line with his heart from the clues. As for Linson, what could he expect from him? He only helped him because he saw that this person had a bottom line. After all, he was also a person with a bottom line. Linson explained the origin of these three people to him out of kindness. He was afraid that he would not be mentally prepared if he really met them in the future. Of course, he did not care too much. What was the point of thinking about the repercussions after killing them? Chapter 1903. Their group is very secretive and they never show off. However, they also have a position within their group, which is Taoist hunters. Linson said seriously. This was no small matter. It was very important for a half-immortal. There are countless great Tao fragments. However, since the collapse of the universe's great Tao, the cultivation world has tracked and analyzed these fragments and found that only a small number of them were obtained by humans. Most of them returned to the universe, including every celestial body, astronomical phenomenon, and nature. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. That's right. Innate great Tao returning to nature is the law of nature. It comes from nature and returns to nature. It's the cycle of karma. It settles in nature and then humans extract the essence from nature. Linson smiled. In theory, that's the case. However, there are always people who try to take shortcuts in this world. The orthodox path of Shenmen is better, but the unorthodox path doesn't have so many rules and regulations in this regard. They believe in the law of the jungle where the strong prey on the weak. He let out a long sigh. He had wanted to say this for a long time. However, every time he was about to say it, he realized that he had no one to confide in. This was because when he said it, the listener would bear the karma and bear the responsibility. The trouble of facing a large interest group was not something that an individual could bear. If he told his friends, he might be harming them. Unless he was like this swordsman in front of him, who had extraordinary strength and an extremely powerful realm behind him that could withstand the possible impact. He knew that he couldn't solve it, but he couldn't pretend to be deaf and mute. Therefore, he could only find someone who might be able to solve it. Of course, it wasn't that he wanted to harm this swordsman. After the swordsman killed the three monsters, he had already wet his shoes. It had nothing to do with him anymore. Not everyone has the luck to obtain these fragments. This process is full of luck. You can be lucky twice, thrice, or even more, but how can you be lucky 36 times? Moreover, when luck finds you, it might not be the fragment of the great Tao that you need. Therefore, there is a huge market in the exterior realm. How do cultivators trade and exchange for innate great Tao? Lu Xiaoyi was also very curious. Does such a market exist? Why do I feel that it's not reliable? Linson smiled bitterly. It's indeed unreliable. The preservation and transportation of fragments was a big problem. There might be creatures in the world of cultivation with such abilities, but the problem was that they also needed luck to encounter fragments. Therefore, such a market cannot exist at all. Lu Xiaoyi nodded to himself. Just like himself, he had the ability to preserve Grand Tao fragments, but he would still be vexed about how to encounter Grand Tao fragments. The fact that a Tai fragment had not been seen for several hundred years was proof enough. Therefore, even if you could find some people who could preserve the fragments of the Great Path, it would be equivalent to having some warehouses. However, the problem of purchasing goods would never be solved. Linson continued, the official market couldn't be established, but the underworld market was really established. I don't know if it exists in the interior heaven, but it's unlikely. This was because it didn't conform to the principles of ancient cultivation. But it does exist in the exterior realm. Because of a chance encounter, I learned some of the truth. I'm ashamed to say that I have the desire to be a hero, but I don't have the ability to do so. As soon as I got involved, I immediately realized that this was not something I could solve. It would be difficult for me to get out of it. That's why I used Maradi's invitation to the lower world. Therefore, even if I escaped from the lower world, there would still be people chasing after me. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. So that's why. However, there was one thing that Linson was right about. In the cultivation world, one had to have tyrannical strength and a strong background to talk about justice. Otherwise, how could one resist? It seemed that his action this time had added a trace of joy to his ordinary life. What was a great responsibility for Linson really didn't matter to him. Compared to what he wanted to do in the future, these troubles might not even be called troubles. The so-called underworld market is, if you can't solve the problem of encountering fragments, then you have to solve the problem of those who are lucky enough to obtain fragments. These lucky people are scattered in the cultivation world of the universe. They are everywhere. There are cultivators from large realms, Taoists from small realms, people from the system, and also wandering ghosts. In their circle, the news that they have obtained Grand Tao fragments is not very confidential, because they have already absorbed and understood it. Even if others are jealous, they can't snatch it away. But that's not the case. Lu Xiaoyi narrowed his eyes. You mean, even if someone obtains a fragment and completely digests it, it can still be refined by others? Linson nodded heavily. Exactly. They somehow got a refining method and a special method to make a heart plate. You only need to find a cultivator who has obtained a Xiantian fragment, and it just so happens that you lack it. Then, you can attack this cultivator and use the heart plate to reflect it. At the same time, when you kill the other party, the Grand Tao fragment will seep out at the moment when the Tao disappears. Not only does it include Xiantian things, but it also includes the cultivator's own understanding. It's very vicious. It's not difficult to find such a fragment carrier. You just need to send people to infiltrate various realms to collect information. You don't even need to send people. In most of the cultivation world, as long as you are willing to spend the spiritual opportunity, you can find out from the merchants. This information is gathered all over the cultivation world of the universe and forms a network. Think about it, Lu Jun. Is there any Grand Tao fragment that you want but can't get? Lu Xiaoyi nodded. To be honest, this method was not only innovative, but also very bold and full of imagination. Why do they think that they can withstand such a huge karma? This is the rhythm of offending the entire cultivation world of the universe. Moreover, what is the price? Is it something that can be solved with spiritual opportunity? I don't think so, right? At the half-immortal level, very few people will worry about resources. Even if the sect behind them has to sell their pants, they will still support them. Linson smiled with praise. This swordsman was very sharp and pointed out the crux of the matter. Let me explain the second problem to Lu Jun first. Indeed, this heart plate is not something that can be bought with jade purity Zi Qing. It is also not something that can be exchanged with any material object. The Grand Tao is priceless and cannot be measured. If there is a need, it has to be introduced by a familiar person and then checked by others. Only after meeting their so-called conditions can it be possible to obtain such a heart plate. The price to pay for this is loyalty. One-time loyalty. I was pulled in by a friend because the Grand Tao that I am most proficient in is the 5 elements and void. The 5 elements are not broken, but the void has been broken for too long. I have not been able to obtain it. In the end, after meeting their conditions and verifying the heart plate required me to swear an oath, I could not overcome the condemnation in my heart, so. Lu Xiaoyi was speechless. He finally understood the weakness of this Lin Sen's character. He was not firm and always wanted to take advantage of others and take shortcuts. He did some shady business that did not suit his status as a half-immortal. However, when the real test came, he would always be able to repent. Just like how the fairies advised him to rather die than destroy the vitality of planet Stack Jade. He actually agreed to it. He was a very real person. He had many weaknesses and also had an unbreakable bottom line. He probably saved this person well. Chapter 1904. So, the real condition is actually for them to use. What is loyalty once? Loyalty can be divided into times. It's just an excuse. After doing it once with them, it will be countless times and they will never be able to get away. Understanding what price they need to pay also means understanding why they are not afraid of becoming enemies with the universe's cultivation world. Because they themselves come from the various cultivation worlds of the universe. Right now, there are only 13 Great Daos broken. In the future, when more Great Daos are broken, their business will get better and better. Their organization will also get bigger and bigger. It's really hard to say how far they can develop in the end. Lin Sen had a lingering fear in his heart. What kind of condition are you talking about? Not mentioning the scandal of Lin Sen changing his mind, Lu Xiaoyi asked a question that he was very interested in. Lin Sen thought for a moment, no. As for the specific conditions, no one told me about them. But my feeling is that they are looking for people with slightly mediocre abilities and bad luck. I can almost be sure of one thing, people like Lu Jun, they definitely won't dare to take him. They can't control him at all. Lu Xiaoyi shrugged, are you praising me? Or are you scolding me? Lin Sen laughed, I'm praising you. Of course, this may also be because they are not strong enough now and their organization is not fully formed yet. When the day comes, they may no longer care about the strength of 1 or 2 cultivators. The heart plate is here, which is why they are so eager to kill me. If they can't take it back, it will be easy for them to use it against me. He took out an intricate and mysterious plate of dense mist from his ring and casually handed it over. Lu Xiaoyi refused to take it. Are you showing this to me? Or are you giving it to me? Lin Sen said bitterly, Lu Jun, please forgive my selfishness. I can't hold on to this thing. Who knows when disaster will fall from the sky? I don't have Lu Jun's ability. Sooner or later, I will lose my life. And I suspect that the reason why these 3 people found it is because of this thing. Lu Jun, take a look. If you can hide it, take it and study it. If not, we will think of a way to destroy it. Lu Xiaoyi took it in his hand and couldn't understand it for a while. To be honest, he had never been interested in this kind of research direction. Playing with the heart plate, he still had many questions. As far as you know, how many people in the exterior realm are attracted by this kind of transaction? Lin Sen was a little embarrassed. my ability and the inconspicuous orthodoxy behind me have determined that my circle is rather limited. Could it be that it was a coincidence that they ran into such a thing? Or was it my mediocrity that attracted their attention? That's why I can't give you an accurate answer, unless I swore an oath at that time. But I don't think any of the men in Marathi were involved in this. Or were there only a few of them? Because it was simply impossible for them to complete such an operation under the watchful eyes of heaven's eyes. There's one thing that Lu Jun should pay attention to. It is not only us half-immortal monstrous geniuses who will participate in this plan. Those true half-immortal Blight Realm experts will also participate in this plan. In fact, there are even more of them than us. After all, we are still young. We still have time and limitless possibilities. But those old Blight Realm experts might not. That's why I feel that the universe's chaos might not be too obvious now. As the universe changes, all the half-immortals will be able to descend to the lower realm. That's when the real chaos will spread. Tens of thousands of Blight Realm experts, it's scary just thinking about it. Lu Xiaoyi sneered. They won't all descend. Seeking change is one choice, but persevering is another. The heavenly axiom will not only give one path. When everyone was seeking change, perseverance was no longer just a matter of psychology, but also a matter of reality. After all, there are fewer people. If tens of thousands of Blight Realm experts descend to the lower realm and only one exterior realm expert is left, I dare to bet that this person will become an immortal. The two of them discussed this issue. Linson only knew a little about it. He couldn't go deeper, otherwise, he might not even be able to survive in the exterior realm. Linson still had some doubts. Lu Jun. In theory, if I give you the heart plate, I shouldn't be tracked anymore. I won't dare to return to my home planet for the next few hundred years. But if I repair the stacked jadewood spirit here, will it bring any trouble to Ling Wang? What if? Lu Xiaoyi waved his hand. Just stay here. The Ling Wang upper realm isn't as weak as you think. Even I have to tuck my tail between my legs when I go in. Just do what you have to do and don't think too much about other things. After finishing the arrangements, Lu Xiaoyi left Dai Chui. Seeing that the fairies were still bustling about on the planet, he was deeply moved. He had put on a good show, but in the end, it had been ruined. In fact, he was also clear that his interactions with these low-level cultivators would only become less and less. How could different worlds have a common language? Cultivation was ultimately lonely. The higher one went, the more lonely it was. He didn't choose to immediately pass through the fifth ring of the interior realm. Instead, he slipped into the Linglong world again and appeared directly on Song Mountain. Taoist Haiyan was still standing in the distance like a stone statue, just like when he left. Lu Xiaoyi didn't care so much about the rules. Even if he knew that according to the tacit understanding of the cultivation world, he shouldn't have returned so quickly, he had never been a person who followed the rules. He handed over the heart plate. Senior, take a look at this. Is it the work of the higher-ups? Haiyan waved his hand but didn't answer him directly. I've already placed a restriction on you. It can be restricted or released. It's all up to you. After saying that, he continued to look at the sky. Judging from his posture, he didn't want to say another word. Lu Xiaoyi didn't feel awkward. He thanked Haiyan with a smile as if this was his own courtyard and he was his senior. After he left, Wen Ji came out of the hall again and complained, I'm sorry. I'm a Lingbao Celestial, but I'm hiding. This kid really doesn't hold back. Does he treat this place as his home? Do we all owe him? He comes when he needs something and runs away when he doesn't? Haiyan sighed. He and Crow are two different kinds of people. Crow is proud and disdains to ask for help. This kid, on the other hand, naturally pulls everyone he knows to his side. He's also proud, but he doesn't show it. He's an ambitious person. If someone with this kind of character wants to do great things, it's a headache. Wen Ji laughed. Isn't it good to be able to do great things? He has to be better than that idiot Li Wuya. The further he can go, the more people will follow and help him. Hyan shook his head. Li Wuya isn't stupid. Look, there's someone helping him stir up *T. Wen Ji asked curiously, that thing, is it the old friends of the higher-ups who are stirring up trouble? Hyan said disdainfully, one look at the method and you can tell that it's vulgar. I don't even need to guess to know who passed down this rotten idea. There are too many half-immortals in the lower realm. They have to get rid of the bad and keep the good, so they use all kinds of methods. This is the consensus of the higher-ups. We can't stop them. I hope this kid can understand that whether he wants to interfere in this kind of thing or not, he has to pay attention to propriety. Sigh, in recent years, I haven't been able to sleep well. I don't know when this will end. Chapter 1905. Lu Xiaoyi didn't return to the fifth ring directly. Instead, he returned to Zhuozhou first and used the ship to teleport back to the Nine Palace world. The advantage of this was that when he appeared, he would appear from the Nine Palace world and not from outer space. This way, he could avoid the eyes of those old guys. Returning home was like being a thief. It was really strange to be a sect master. When he secretly came out, this secret trip didn't exceed 30 days. It was still within the acceptable range. He summoned 2 of his trusted subordinates. Did anything happen during my time in the Nine Palace world? Song Rong smiled and said, Musher. Actually, boss can still wander around outside for some time. Zhou Fan also said, boss, shouldn't the 2 of us take advantage of the secret passage out of the realm of 9 palaces? That way, we'll have more motivation to cover for each other. You're always taking all the benefits for yourself, how can we continue to cover for you? Lu Xiaoyi flatly denied and insisted on not relaxing. These 2 brats had been with him for too long and understood his temperament very well. They weren't easy to fool. However, the key flaw was that idiot Agio. Trying to cover it up only made it more conspicuous. After he entered the Nine Palace world, he didn't allow others to enter. Wasn't this telling others that he wasn't in the Nine Palace world? Something went wrong when he didn't get a single order. This 9th master, however, he didn't say anything. They were all on the same side. If there was a chance to wander around outside, he would also promise to give them a chance. The days began to calm down. However, in this calmness, he was accumulating an even stronger explosive power. However, this explosive power might no longer be related to the cultivation world. On this day, senior sister Yan Dai came to find trouble. Little E, you returned to the 3rd year? Well done. No one is harassing there anymore. Yang Ding has set the rules for them. It's much more stable now. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. It can't be helped. Everyone has no ambition. It's best if they don't have it. It will be troublesome if they do. Yan Dai smiled. It's good that they have the intention. It's best for them to walk their own path. It's not good to spoil things by pulling up seedlings. In the dome, those who were familiar with him did not call him sect leader, including his friends, head sword master and head calabash, and his 2 senior sisters. He might have some authority in the middle and lower levels, but that was because they did not understand him. In the upper levels of the dome, everyone was more casual. This kind of atmosphere was very good, and everyone was relaxed. Yan Dai played it down. I've come here to look for you twice. They said that you were cultivating in the Nine Palaces realm. I don't believe this kind of bullshit. You and Lord Jiu are basically wearing the same pair of pants. It's been like this since Foundation establishment. Knowing is one thing, but I just won't say it. Lu Xiaoyi pulled a long face. Senior sister, if you have something to say, just say it. It's not your style to beat around the bush like this. Yan Dai smiled sweetly. Alright, then I'll be direct. In a few days, we will hold a 5th Ring Kun Dao conference outside the 5th Ring space. Yes, it's the place where Tu Guan was. Only high-level Yuanian cultivators were allowed to participate. we will discuss how to consolidate the cultivation status of Qin cultivators when the era changes. There are many topics, including almost all the Qin Dao elites in the fifth ring space. We will contribute our meager strength to the future of Qin cultivators. Taking advantage of the fifth ring space's great victory at the Green Skyang River, we can raise some conditions, such as Yan Dai mumbled a lot of benefits and demands, which gave Lu Xiaoyi a headache. He couldn't remember that much. In any case, the general idea was that she wanted to turn things around and rise to the top. Yan Dai smiled charmingly. This was her old problem. When she had something to ask of Lu Xiaoyi, she would be extremely flirtatious. After using him, she would be as cold as ice. One of her hands was even drawing circles on his chest, which made Lu Xiaoyi want to give her a taste of her own medicine. Not only are there fifth ring heroes, but there are also foreign women. Among them, the farthest ones are from the Yangding realm and the Linglong upper realm. We thought that the level of this conference was broad enough, but in order to make it more grand, we needed some special guests. Senior Qin Yangzi of the Three Pure Ones is famous in the universe, but they haven't returned yet. The Supreme Chang Jin is famous in the universe, but he is too old. Recently, he has been in seclusion and doesn't see guests. We can't forcefully invite him. If we can't invite any of the big three of the fifth ring space, this Qin Dao conference at the eastern sky level will seem to lack a foundation, so you see. Lu Xiaoyi shook his head like a rattle drum. I'm not going. The Qin Dao conference is for women. What's the matter with me going? How is old Chang Jin in seclusion? He's clearly hiding from you. Last month, I was drinking wine at his place and was very happy. Let me tell you, if you can invite old Chang Jin, I'll go. If you can't, then I won't go either. Can I match up to a little green in a field of 10,000 flowers? I won't go, even if you beat me to death. No matter how big the circles you draw, I won't go. Of course, if the radius of the circles is from the heart to the eyebrows, maybe I can consider it. Yan Dai's eyes moved and she began to draw big circles. However, she drew very slowly, like a cat scratching its body, sharp yet gentle. Little E. How has the Five Rings Qin Dao been treating you all this time? You have to have a conscience. Many Qin Dao friends have asked me to bring you letters. Senior Sister Tong Yan from the Holy Temple, a group of sisters from the Qin Dao Li realm, and many, many more. Lu Xiaoyi was unmoved. I'm not going. Besides, I can't go either. The old guys won't allow me to go out of the atmosphere. I think Senior Sister is just wasting your energy. Yan Dai's finger moved lightly and began to draw a semicircle. Look, the things I've asked you for all these years are very limited. I've also hidden so many secrets for you. I can also give you the key to the array formation of the Huaqing pool in the mountain behind my cave residence. Slowly, her finger also reached the key part. Can't we negotiate? Lu Xiaoyi let out a long sigh. All right, I really can't persuade you. However, Senior Sister, can you ask your spiritual pet to take its hand away? Yan Dai smiled sweetly, and the colorful cat in her arms shook its hand with a look of disdain. Amidst Yin Ling's voice, she escaped from the hall. I'm going to find the elders. Little E, remember to keep your word. After Yan Dai left, Lu Xiaoyi smiled bitterly. Actually, it was good to go out and relax, but the problem was that he was the only Qian Xiu among the group of females. It was too awkward. Who should he tear his flesh with? Who should he drink with? Was it appropriate to make dirty jokes in an occasion like the assembly? It wasn't like he hadn't been to the Qin Dao assembly in the bounded domain before. It was even when he went with two senior sisters and Jean Dan. However, there were countless handsome young men serving as attendants at that time, so he didn't stand out. However, this assembly was held at the Tu Guan Palace in the asteroid group. It was impossible for there to be little show attendants. Everyone was at least at the Yuanying level. Who should serve whom? There were only a few people in the Five Rings who were really important. In terms of power and sex, the only ones that the outside world knew about were the Xianyuan Three Pure Ones. In terms of individuals, only Qin Jiangzi, Chang Jin, Qing Xian, and him were present. In this way, wasn't he the only one going? Women were really troublesome. Chapter 1906. As expected, Yan Dai had successfully obtained the approval of the Elder Council. This was inevitable. The old men were also afraid of the Kun cultivators. Lu Xiaoyi wanted to find a few familiar subordinates to go with him to pass the time and not appear abruptly lonely. But the night before departure, Le Feng went into seclusion, Song Rong went out on a mission, and Zhou Fan went to resolve a dispute. These bastards couldn't be counted on at a critical moment. Yan Dai was immensely proud because she had invited the most powerful and popular guest. There was no need to mention Chang Jin Qing Yangzi's reputation and identity, but after all, he was old and in the past. The future belonged to the younger generation, and Lu Xiaoyi was now undoubtedly the leader of the younger generation in the eastern sky cultivation world. Perhaps there were still hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the universe, but if one combined his personal strength, reputation, and achievements, no one could stop him. Cultivators looked at the potential in the future. Of course, they were also the most popular guests in this Qundao convention. Especially for the Kun cultivators who came from afar, it was definitely more meaningful to come into contact with the future than with the past. How many guests are there this time? Senior sister, I'm talking about the masters. You know what I mean. Yan Dai was in high spirits, and one of her hands was still tightly holding his arm. It wasn't to get close, but because she was afraid that he would run away again when he saw the big scene where Ying flourished and Yang declined. Yes, in fact, we invited a lot. Not only the supreme leaders of the three pure ones, but also the masters of other sects and forces. But you know, these people are basically old-fashioned, rigid, and stupid. They have a deep-rooted male chauvinism that has been passed down since ancient times. If Chang Jin Qing Yangzi didn't come, they would have an excuse, and the result was, we've also invited famous figures from the outer realms, such as Yang Ding, Kan Yangzi, and Yu Yang, as well as some experts from the smaller realms. Don't worry, the fifth ring masters might not come. I won't hide this from you, but those from the outer realms will come, right? They came so far, so they can only deal with it, right? No matter what, you're not the only one who's green. Lu Xiaoyi was dragged along unwillingly, and his feet dragged like a dead dog. He had a bad premonition in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. After all, he was more open-minded about the status of men and women in his previous life. Halfway through the flight, a Xianyuan female swordsman came to report to the president, Yan Dai, but when she saw Lu Xiaoyi was next to her, she stammered. Lu Xiaoyi glared at him. Speak. I'm the sect leader. I'm more senior than her. What do you want to hide from me? Don't you have the discipline of the Xianyuan people? Tell me honestly, don't hide. The female swordsman looked at Yan Dai again. In the end, she couldn't go against the leader's authority. Leader, senior sister Dai, it's like this. Kan Yangzi and Yu Yang arrived a few days ago. Later, they were extremely bored, so they said they wanted to go around and catch a few void beasts to play with. Since then, they've disappeared without a trace. After they left, the other famous cultivators we tricked, oh no, the famous cultivators we invited, also disappeared one after another with the excuse of visiting friends. Senior sister, they all ran away. Yan Dai's arm tightened, and she clamped Lu Xiaoyi's arm tightly, even if she had to press it against her chest. She could feel that this guy's magic power was circulating inside his body. This was a sign that he was about to run away. So what if they're gone? Nameless people, they're just wasting food and wine. We gave them face, but they didn't want it. I say, what's wrong with you guys? Can't you even keep an eye on these few people? The female swordsman's face was bitter. We can't do anything about it. We can't use force, right? It's too obvious to use a honey trap. These old guys are all cunning. Some of them escape by urinating, and some by excrement. We can't send people to follow them. Yan Dai proudly stuck out her chest. Lu Xiaoyi's perception was sharp, and his heart swayed. It doesn't matter. Our Xiaoyi is here. It doesn't matter whether the others come or not. Lu Xiaoyi was delayed for a while, and then he realized that he had been tricked. The most crucial time to escape had been wasted by senior sister's chest. It seemed that he couldn't change this hobby of his. What a waste of time. Soon, they approached the group of asteroids. Within the range of the planets, the 4 slaughter temples were still intact. The cultivators of the cultivation world were really amazing. Their mentality was amazing, and they chose to hold a meeting in such a place. They were somewhat murderous. With a sweep of his divine sense, he found that there was not a single man among the thousands of cultivators. He was somewhat unwilling in his heart. Senior sister, you said that you would at least find a few drinking companions for me. Look, is there anyone with a handle? Yan Dai was still playing dumb. If you go, there will be the first one. If another cultivator comes to see you, he won't leave. Who can you blame for this? I told you to come earlier to set a benchmark, but you didn't want to. You just had to come at the right time. Now look at what happened. Don't worry, which meeting doesn't have a few latecomers? You'll meet them eventually. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. Of course, he wasn't afraid of this situation. Not to mention thousands of people, even if there were tens of thousands of people, he would still be at ease. Sleeping among thousands of flowers, he would still be a romantic ghost. But he was thinking about other things. There was a profound truth behind the women's liberation movement that was in full swing. This was something he had never thought about before. In this chaotic world, the change of eras was about to arrive. People and forces with ideas were considering every day, measuring the changes in the situation of the universe. Humans, beasts, various races. Taoists, Buddhists, countless orthodoxies. North, south, east, west, 4 quadrants, many realms. But no one would really consider that there was actually an extremely large group of people with great strength. Women. Then, why couldn't women also occupy half the sky? Even if it was a name? Part of it? Why couldn't such a change be a part of the change of eras? A new era. A new atmosphere. A new concept. It was completely possible. In fact, the efforts of Kun cultivators had never stopped. From the day of cultivation. And 20,000 years ago, they began to spread faster. In Zhou Xian, in the 5th ring, in the exquisite world, and in all the realms he had been to, as long as human cultivators were in charge, such a thought was bound to exist. It was already a brilliant trend, but almost everyone turned a blind eye to it. They still regarded the efforts of these Kun cultivators as nonsense, as an extremely boring game. This was wrong. Liu Su and the others had already used practical actions to prove that they were willing to give up their lives for this. Such a thought was terrifying. Once it erupted, it would be an important force that could influence the human cultivation world. And humans were the dominant force that dominated the cultivation world of the universe. Then, who could control this force? Or rather, whoever could make this force favor them would be the greatest help. But now, no one was really paying attention to this. Was it slow? No, this was inertia. It was the most deep-rooted thought in this world where men were superior to women. But the world was about to change. The change of eras was coming. Lu Xiaoyi suddenly realized that this trip, which he had been forced to do, had suddenly opened up his mind. He had finally found a sharp entry point that could break the old order without attracting too much hostility. Chapter 1907. The female swordsman paused. In addition, senior sister Tong Yan might have considered this situation and was afraid that the sect leader would be embarrassed. Therefore, after discussing with the other sisters, we don't plan to introduce the guests at the beginning of the conference, but at the end of the conference. I specially asked you to let me know and see if you have any objections. Yan Dai's heart skipped a beat. This was also a good idea. Firstly, it would not embarrass Lu Xiaoyi. Secondly, if there were more male guests, they would most likely not leave after seeing the Xianyuan sect leader. As for when the guests would appear, according to the convention, they would appear before the conference. However, things in the cultivation world were not the same as in the moral world. If you were late to the conference in the moral world and missed the end, you might as well not go and annoy the sect leader. However, in the cultivation world, the universe was too big and the journey was too long. Therefore, even if you arrived at the end, it would still be considered a token of appreciation. Therefore, the appearance at the end of the conference was just as important as the beginning. It was to accommodate those cultivators who had special requests. Some people would come and show their faces at the opening ceremony and then leave. Some people would only show their faces at the end and hurriedly show their faces. Everyone was very busy, especially now that the universe was in a mess. There were too many things to worry about. Yen Dai replied, "Okay. Go and tell senior sister Tong Yan that I agree with their proposal." After the female swordsman left, Lu Xiaoyi took the initiative to tighten his arms and leaned his face over. "You can use a cat's paw as a hand, but you can't use it as a chest, right?" Of course, he did not touch anything. Yen Dai was puzzled by Lu Xiaoyi's behavior. This guy was afraid? That shouldn't be the case, right? Shouldn't he be happy? It would be best if there was an open conference, preferably on the beach, and then he would hold up an umbrella for everyone. Then spray water to lower the temperature. However, she still showed her gentleness. She could not provoke him now. "Little E, don't be afraid. With me, your senior sister, protecting you, who can eat you?" Lu Xiaoyi's thoughts were elsewhere. He subconsciously said, "I'm just afraid that you'll protect me. Others won't dare to eat me." He was thinking about how to make use of this rare opportunity to gain the overall friendship of the Kun cultivators. Of course, since he was here, the Kun cultivators would definitely have a good impression of him. However, compared to what he wanted to do in the future, this was not enough. He needed them to see him as their hope to realize women's rights. Someone who could help them. Someone they could trust. Someone who shared the same beliefs as them. Only in this way could he obtain their selfless. When women start to help you selflessly, that power is endless. Moreover, they can bring out countless support that you can't even imagine. This was a serious matter. Of course, he couldn't use his navel to solve the problem, and it couldn't be solved, even if he ground an iron pestle into a needle. What are you waiting for? If you don't hurry, we will be late. Since we we's of course, right? Lu Xiaoyi raised his head and smiled. "Senior sister, I still feel that it's not appropriate to participate in the conference like this, Yen Yu. She only had this one good seedling. If he really ran away at the last minute, this conference would be overshadowed." She could not force him because she knew this guy's temperament. If he was really unwilling, it would be useless even if Yen came down. Therefore, she could not force him. Thus, she slowed down and said softly, "You can't go back on your words. If you have any requests, just tell me. I will definitely satisfy you." She had already decided to sacrifice a little more. Who asked this guy to be so fond of this? Wasn't it because of this idea that he had to give up at the most critical moment? However, Lu Xiaoyi's answer was beyond her expectations. "Senior sister, I feel that my attire is very incongruous. If there are many guests, it doesn't matter. However, if it's just me, it will easily lead to rumors. In this world, there will never be a lack of people who can't bear to see others doing well and gossip about others. Moreover, it's the first time such a heavenly Kun Dao conference is held. It's better if it's pure. If it's all Kun cultivators, it will have more appeal. Therefore, it's best if there's someone who can raise the banner of Kun Dao and has a reputation in the cultivation world of the universe." Yen Dai didn't quite understand what he was saying. What exactly did this fellow mean by saying so much? It didn't seem like he didn't want to go. It seemed like he didn't want to go. Attire, what did that mean? What are you talking about? If there really is such a person, wouldn't we know how to invite them? Isn't it because we can't find them? There are only a few people who can play cards in Eastern Elephant Heaven. The old and the young are all Kun cultivators. Lu Xiaoyi sighed emotionally as if he had made a huge sacrifice. Forget it. For senior sister's matter, I'll go all out. I have to participate, but I can't appear out of place. Then there's only one way. Eastern Elephant Heaven's first Kuandao Conference and Universe Women's Joint Conference was held in a simple and crude two-guan astronomical phenomenon outside the fifth ring space. The name of this conference was a little big, but because it was big, no one really took it seriously. Instead, they treated it as a joke, a kind of self-entertainment for Kun cultivators. In the tens of thousands of years of universe cultivation history, such laughable forms were everywhere. Not to mention the name, even if you called yourself the Immortal World Women's Conference, no one would care. History often began like this. At that time, the people who were in the situation did not know what this meant. However, when time passed, when the universe was really turned upside down, and Kuandao was completely overturned, some people began to regret it. They regretted not stopping this evil trend at that time. The power of Kuandao was quite terrifying. Just taking the top 4 sects of the fifth ring as an example, 20% to 30% of Xianyuan cultivators were female cultivators. This was only because the sword vein, a more iron-blooded orthodoxy, was not suitable for women. But in the 3 pure ones and supreme ones, the number of female cultivators was close to 40%. Jialan directly reached more than 60%. There was also a pure Kun cultivator orthodoxy like the Kun Daoli realm, which was not rare in the fifth ring. If the fifth ring was like this, it could be seen in other realms as well. The difference between Yang Ding and the fifth ring was similar, and the exquisite world was simply half of the universe. In fact, the talent of Kun cultivators on the path of cultivation was far from being understood by the world. It was just that this group rarely caused trouble and basically followed the direction of their own orthodoxy. Among the various universe disasters, there were no independent incidents with Kun cultivators as the main cause. Therefore, although there were many discerning people in the cultivation world, it just so happened that everyone was blind on this point. Quantitative change would eventually lead to qualitative change. Under the push of various forces, under the premise of the universe's chaos, and under the window of time when the era changed, this day would come sooner or later. When that time came, Kun cultivators would not be weak. They also had combat power, and they were not weak. Whoever was the first to set up a trap would have the upper hand. On this point, Lu Xiaoyi, who had the thoughts of his previous life, had a unique advantage. Chapter 1908. This was an all-inclusive Kuandao conference. At the beginning of the gathering, there would occasionally be special guests who would join, but they wouldn't be able to stay long before they were blown away by the soaring in qi here. It wasn't in terms of ability, but in terms of mentality. The sky was filled with incense, and the sky was filled with clothes and armor. This was a perfect conference, a harmonious conference, a victory conference, and a conference of hope. Sitting on the rostrum were the Kun cultivators of the 4 major powers, including the 5-ring master. They were all at the primordial spirit stage, and there were even top yang spirits like Tong Yen, the host of the conference. In the future, there might be even higher-level existences. Bai Fuzi of the 3 pure ones was also a yang spirit, and so was the Supreme Lady of Red Cherry Blossom. Xianyuan was almost there, but it was said that senior sister Yan Cheng had already gone to the interior realm. She wasn't a yang spirit, but she was better than a yang spirit. Just from the strength of the 5-ring masters, one could see the unfathomable strength of the Kun cultivators. Now that Xianyuan was present, there were 2 primordial spirit swordsmen sitting on the rostrum. One was Yan Dai, who was very famous in the Dome Swordsman group. The other was unknown. She wore colorful clothes and was a little vulgar. Her personality was a little shy, and she looked a little ordinary. She lacked the charm of a female cultivator, but she had a heroic spirit. However, her strength wasn't inferior in the slightest. There were also several female cultivators from powerful realms on the rostrum. There were Yang Ding, Ling Wang, Jiao Bai, and so on. Several major sects had spoken. Xian Yuan had Yan Dai, but it was basically a general discussion. This Kun Dao conference focused on the core ideas, the rules of conduct, the vision of the future, and so on. It was a big step forward, but it wouldn't be obsessed with a single event. It meant that a real organization was taking shape, even if such an organization might always be loose. Every participating female cultivator was qualified to put forward their own opinions. Then, they would summarize, debate, weigh, and finally come to a decision. There might be changes in the future, but the core was basically formed. For these Yuanian cultivators, their experience, knowledge, and vision were the best. Their thinking was meticulous, and their plans were far-reaching. They discussed in groups and reached a consensus. This was a very time-consuming process, but the Kun cultivators enjoyed it. Yan Dai couldn't completely focus on the discussion because she had to constantly pay attention to the troublesome person beside her. Close your legs. Slanted. Don't cross your legs. Don't be so arrogant. You are now a Kun cultivator, not a mountain king sitting in the Hall of Brotherhood. This position is uncomfortable. It was fine once in a while, but after a long time, it would become awkward. Senior sister, can you consider the difference in the physiological structure of the universe? I have a new thing here. Clamping it was uncomfortable. It goes against the nature of freedom. Just keep your mouth shut when you laugh. There's no need to open your mouth like a hippo. You think you're the only one with white teeth? I won't laugh, all right? Straighten your chest. Fold your hands under your abdomen. Don't act like a mollusk that might slip out of the chair at any moment. Please, my place is flat. No matter how hard he tried, he wouldn't be able to make it look good. He might as well bend his knees and not be able to tell, why did she put her hand under her abdomen? Is it appropriate to solve the problem by yourself in front of everyone? Let's just drink a little when we celebrate. Take a bite. It's not like we're having a drinking competition. You're like a drunkard, drinking every time you raise your cup. If people see you, they'll think that I, Xian Yuan, am a drunkard. Doesn't drinking represent sincerity? The food on the table is just for show. It's not for you to fill your stomach here. You're pissing me off. Do you really lack this one bite? Wasting food is a great crime. Don't randomly touch your eyes. Stare at whoever is wearing skimpy clothes. It'll make people think that you're a lesbian. Actually, I just want to do something practical and build a body database for everyone. The Kun Dao conference continued in this happy atmosphere. Everyone was selfless and honest with each other. Gradually, some core principles and regulations were sorted out. This was also the most important topic of this conference. The 36 principles of the Kun Dao conference covered all aspects. In a word, it was to let the Kun cultivators play a greater role in the future cultivation world. They would truly participate, and not be reduced to the vassals of others. These things had been approved by everyone through voting and truly formed into a program. In the future, it would become something that would guide their actions. Of course, it might not be comprehensive, especially when it went against their own sect's orthodoxy. How to choose the weight? This would take a long time to solve and explore the experience. It couldn't be rushed. Once the rules were formed, they had to abide by the covenant. This was the cultivation world. Of course, it was impossible to write something in the form of a book. The cultivation world had its own magic. A young spirit gathered a trace of Ziqing and then engraved the rules. When this set of procedures was completed, the Ziqing had already become a rule of nothingness. It could split and disperse. Every Kun cultivator poured their own trace of faith into it. Slowly, the power of the rules became stronger and stronger. If one day, the Kun cultivators who tacitly agreed to this rule reached a certain critical state, it would become a true rule, a part of the rules permitted by the heavenly Tao. This required every Quen cultivator at the conference to spread it and find like-minded Quen cultivator friends. Then, they would add in the faith of the newcomers. In this way, it would expand and finally become a force. It would no longer be a thing, but a rule. If you acknowledged and followed it, you would have the right to spread it. It was very mysterious. Who was the one who came up with this method? It was hard to imagine that it was the work of a lower realm cultivator. Could it be that the female immortals above had also begun to make a move? Everyone was silently experiencing this rule that could not be completely called a rule. They were thinking about how to make everything more perfect. This was a difficult beginning. History would remember this moment. On the main platform, Tong Yen smiled and said, "These days, Lord Lu has been wronged. I've troubled you to sit here and watch a joke. Just because you are the only Qian Dao witness of this conference, Lord Lu will always be a friend of our Quen Dao." Lu Xiaoyi disguised himself as a woman. He could hide it from the people below who didn't know his background, but of course, he couldn't hide it from the Yang spirit and Quen cultivators who were close to him on the main platform. He didn't deliberately hide it. These people also knew that he would appear as a special guest at the end of the conference to boost everyone's morale. He wanted to let everyone know that they also had supporters in the Qianxiu world. Bai Fuzi also agreed, "Senior apprentice Sister Tong is right. Lord Lu is willing to come because he recognizes us. Even if he doesn't say a word, he will stand with us Quen cultivators in spirit. You will always be our friend." The crown of red cherry blossom also didn't fall behind. Senior sisters have spoken everyone's thoughts. Then, I wonder what Lord Lu, as an outsider, thinks about this convention. Or, is there something missing? What improvements can be made? Chapter 1909. Lu Xiaoyi chuckled. Halfway through, he pursed his lips, causing Yen Dai to shake her head. "There are some things I don't quite understand. I need to confirm it." The hosts nodded. They knew this person's ability. Moreover, as the only half-immortal present, his vision was higher than theirs. Therefore, they urgently needed someone to look at this problem from the perspective of a half-immortal. In the future, they might even need to look at this problem from the perspective of an immortal. Only in this way could their convention truly become a rule. Lu Xiaoyi didn't hold back. He grinned and began to talk. "If my guess is correct, when the convention is first formed, it's equivalent to everyone here possessing the aura of the convention's rules. It's illusory, but it's also real. It's illusory, it's formless and intangible, but it's real. Everyone can use it to express their ideas. Then, can you all use it to transmit information to each other?" White Lotus said cautiously, "In theory, I can transmit my newly comprehended ideas to supplement the core. I'll let everyone examine it. But I can't confirm who I'll transmit it to. I can only transmit it to everyone. In other words, this can only be a place for everyone to exchange ideas. It shouldn't be a way to resolve personal grudges. If I'm in trouble, someone will come and save me. This is the principle. Otherwise, sooner or later, this thing will be used for private purposes. We can only cut it off at the source. In fact, this method of transmitting information could not only be used by Qianxiu. In theory, Qianxiu could also use it. But Qianxiu would never be able to do it. Because there was no such belief that could make all the men in the universe unite to resist the oppression of women. In fact, it was a kind of expansion of the human mind. The reason why it could be expanded to the entire universe was that as long as there were humans, there would definitely be women who wanted to get rid of the concept of male supremacy. This was something that men could never do. Lu Xiaoyi nodded and gave a thumbs up. Brilliant. Preparing for a rainy day. It's really brilliant. Then, does everyone have the same status in it? Or is there a hierarchy? Are there higher-ups and ordinary people? Are there veterans? Or are there newcomers? This time, the red cherry blossom crown answered him. We don't think there should be a hierarchy. We should treat everyone equally because you will never be able to set a suitable standard. Should we divide them according to their realm? Or according to their fame and power? Or should we compare everyone's understanding of the convention's ideas and discuss it? There were no standards. Even if there was such a standard, in the history of cultivation, it would eventually become a way for some people to control the chapter. Therefore, it was better not to have any. There were no new or old people, and there was no distinction between the yang spirit and the yuanying. In the chapter, everyone was an individual, and that was all. The opinion of a yuanying was the same as that of a yang spirit. We believe that this is the only way to ensure that the rules of the association will never change. We will never forget our original intentions, and we will not be reduced to a tool for others like some organizations. She was talking about the heavenly eyes. Lu Xiaoyi felt the same way. Good. Your considerations are necessary in the long run. In other words, after the thousands of people here leave this place and return to their respective domains, they can use this standard to develop members. Those who agree can inject their own beliefs into it and become a newcomer. Will they have the same rights as you old people? Through this fission, it spread further and further, wider and wider, expanding at an exponential rate. Then, very soon, you founders may no longer be able to control the chapters. Have you thought about that? Tong Yen said firmly, we've thought about it. It did not matter. We do not want to control it. Because everyone who joins must inject their own true beliefs, we are not afraid that it will change. It was originally meant to serve all the Kun cultivators in the universe, not just the few of us. Lu Xiaoyi clapped his hands. Great. Because the ideals are great. The rules of the future will definitely be great. Then, I have roughly figured it out, so I'll give you some specific suggestions. The female cultivators were very cautious. They knew that this young half-immortal was about to give them advice, and it might be very precious. I think that the current chapter is only the first draft, and it is still very far from the final draft. Even in the future, there will never be a final draft, because humans have to keep up with the times. My question is, how do we change it? How do we change it? For example, if a female cultivator from a distant star domain puts forward a constructive idea, how do you decide? How do we discuss it? How do we decide whether or not to put this idea into the chapter? Is it possible to hold another convention like this one? It will be a waste of time and effort, and the further the chapter spreads, the more impossible it will be for everyone to gather together like this. When the chapter spreads and has a wider audience, similar constructive suggestions will spring up like bamboo shoots after a rain, endless. What will you do? Don't do anything, just hold a convention every day. Even if you hold a convention, will you be able to gather everyone? There are millions of cultivators, and in the future, you might even include Jean Dan's foundation establishment into the chapter. That is simply an astronomical number. The few chairmen fell into deep thought. Yes, this was a very dangerous problem. There would definitely be many good suggestions to be added, so what should they do? Not only could they ask for everyone's opinions, but they also did not have to waste time and effort to come all the way here for a convention. Facing everyone's probing gazes, Lu Xiaoyi chuckled. It's actually very simple. You can take advantage of the fact that the chapter has not been fully formed to design two buttons to express your opinions. One is called like, and the other is called bad. Yan Dai's eyes lit up. It was a really good idea. This guy's specialty was that he was usually unreliable, but he could take over at critical moments. That's right. In this way, no matter who has an important new idea in the future, they only need to put their idea on the chapter for everyone to see. Then, everyone can express their opinion and vote for it. If the like exceeds 50%, no, perhaps 80% to 90%, then this line can be engraved into the chapter. Everyone can activate their beliefs together, and it will be easy. If the bad exceeds 50%, then don't even think about it. If it exceeds 80% or 90%, then this person's qualifications will need to be re-examined. Why did she do this? As for the question of what percentage, this was a technical problem. Lu Xiaoyi did not participate, so they could decide on their own. The key was that this method solved the big problem of how they would supplement the chapter in the future. The significance was very far-reaching. It allowed the chapter to finally become a rule, and there was a feasible way. It would no longer be an armchair strategist. The Kun cultivators were very excited. This was the excitement of getting closer and closer to their dreams. They finally confirmed that this most famous half-immortal of the eastern sky had not come here to be a decorative prop, but was truly standing on their side. This was too rare. Chapter 1910. Does Lord Lu have any other opinions? A few Kun cultivators were unwilling to give up. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. Yin and Yang are the Tao. The sun comes from the east, the moon comes from the west, the length of yin and yang, and the beginning and the end patrol each other. There is yin and yang and yin, and they cannot be separated. Only then are there heaven and earth, sun and moon, day and night, cold and heat, men and women, up and down, and so on. In fact, you all understand these principles. But why can't they be seen in a specific chapter? As the saying goes, when things reach an extreme, they will move in the opposite direction. No matter how good your original intentions are, if you go to the extreme, you may not last long. The same goes for yin and yang men and women. Without the infusion of yang energy and faith, the chapter will not last long. Your faith is not to ultimately suppress yang, but to balance yin and yang. This is the core key. Several Kun cultivators suddenly understood. They were all people in the yang spirit realm, and some things could be understood with a hint. There was no need to say more. Bai Fuzi bowed deeply. Thank you for your advice, Lord Lu. I understand. There should also be a place for Qian cultivators in the chapter. As long as you can understand and support us Kun cultivators, you can be included. This way, there is a master and a subordinate, there is a light and a heavy weight, there is yin and yang. This is the right way. Like this, I will represent everyone to invite Lord Lu to be the first Qian cultivator to inject faith into the chapter. I wonder if Lord Lu is willing to accept? Lu Xiaoyi shook his head. Everyone's hearts sank. Although he was flirtatious, he still had the mentality of men being superior to women. Lu Xiaoyi didn't care that Yan Dai was giving him meaningful glances. Lu Xiaoyi smiled. I won't refuse your request. But the way you're doing it is wrong. Because you said it yourselves that everything needs to be discussed and decided together. Then, whether I am the first Qian cultivator to be inscribed in the chapter or not should be decided by everyone present, not just the few of you. You have to remember that this is the iron law, the bottom line. Only by adhering to this bottom line will the chapter not be reduced to a tool for others. Starting from now, starting from me. This time, all the cultivators on the rostrum paid their respects to him. As expected of a half-immortal, he was self-disciplined and cautious, and he didn't ask for anything. Several young gods began to discuss Lu Xiaoyi's opinions with rapt attention. It could be said that both of his opinions were very important. One was operational, and the other was principled. Later, they would discuss it with all the cultivators. Just as Lu Xiaoyi had said, everything had to be done from the foundation. There should be no special privileges, even if they were wholeheartedly working for the common good. Yan Dai cast a glance at him and decided to give him a sweet date. Yes, this guy was still useful. It was worth it to spend so much effort on him. Lu Xiaoyi looked at the item that senior sister had sent over. That's it? I worked so hard to come up with a plan for you, and all you gave me was the key to the Huaqing pool? This is what you promised me, okay? Yan Dai had no other choice. Man, I can also give you a chance to bathe in the Huaqing pool. Just once. Under the combined efforts of Tong Yan and the others, the new chapter quickly took shape. When the chapter appeared in the minds of the cultivators, they saw two clouds of air, one black and one white. The black one was a negative review, and the white one was alike. It was incomparably clear. In addition, the acceptance of Qian Xiu, who shared the same ideology, was basically unanimously approved. This world couldn't do without women, but it couldn't do without men either. It was a very simple principle that didn't need to be explained. At least, it was yuanying. This was understood. After the chapter is finalized, there will be a celebration ceremony. After that, there will be a closing ceremony. You can appear at the closing ceremony and see if everyone likes you for joining. Or if there are more negative reviews. Little E, I'll tell you the truth. You really might not be able to join. The chapter was finalized, and everyone cheered. This was a beginning. They were all witnesses to history. Thus, the celebration began. For Qian Xiu, this might be the time to drink wine, eat meat, and brag. However, the cultivators were different from them. Topics about clothing, beauty, and maintaining youth were popular here. This was the nature of different genders. Perhaps it was because of this that their gathering was safe and sound under the gaze of the entire universe's cultivation world. Whether it was intentional or not, this became their best layer of cover. They thought that everything was going smoothly, but a trace of disharmony appeared during the celebration. 3 cultivators came from afar. 2 of them were true monarchs, and 1 was yuanying. They wanted to take away their own members at the Kuandao convention. This caused dissatisfaction among the participating cultivators. As the hosts, a few young gods were inevitably involved. An old woman with a head full of white hair stood in front of everyone. She knew that she wasn't in danger and had come according to reason. To be fair, the Kuandao convention was a place to talk about reason. This old woman comes from the tiger-striped star zone and comes from the White River clan. On this occasion, this old woman represents the White River clan to congratulate all the sisters. Although I don't agree, I'm still happy. We shouldn't have disturbed you during the convention, but we have a reason for doing so. We really can't help it. Please forgive us, sisters. After she finished her opening speech, the old woman pointed at a yuanying female cultivator in the convention. This woman's name is Hua Ping, and she's from the tiger-striped White River clan. She's a junior of my clan. She's been nurtured by the clan since she was young, and she's worked hard to achieve what she has today. When she was young, the White River clan had a marriage agreement with a large clan in the region, and it all fell on this woman. For this reason, not only did she obtain a large amount of resources, but she also helped my White River clan through a difficult period. Now, Hua Ping's wings have grown. Her wings have hardened, so she doesn't want to abide by the previous agreement. She took advantage of the Kuandao convention to run away and escape. The heavens have limits, and people follow rules. In the cultivation world, there are many established rules, and they are the foundation of our existence. We don't dare to forget them. Even here, after joining the Sisters' Convention, there are some responsibilities that can't be avoided. We're here to take her back. We're not deliberately causing trouble. This insignificant small world is like the light of a sparkling fire. It doesn't dare to compete with the brilliance of the sun and moon. However, the universe is vast, and we don't have any clues to look for her. We can only stop her here. We have no choice but to ask for your understanding. Sisters, you are all reasonable people. You know how difficult it is to live in the cultivation world. If you promise someone, you must do it. Otherwise, you can't live without trust, and you won't have a place to live. All of this is the truth, and Hua Ping can prove it. Sisters, please make your judgment. Tigerland was a medium-sized world domain. Its spiritual vigor wasn't bad, but it was a little small. There were very few sects there, but there were many clans there. It was a relatively different cultivation environment. But in essence, it was no different from a sect. It was nothing more than benefits and survival. The only thing that was relatively special was that marriages between clans were more popular. Depending on the distance of the bloodline, it could also affect the living conditions of the clans to a certain extent. Marriage was such a method. If a large clan took a fancy to a certain woman from a small clan and felt that she had a bright future, they would invest in her in advance and help her grow. The condition was that when she was truly successful in the future, the two parties would form a family. Of course, if she was always at the foundation establishment stage and couldn't meet the conditions for marriage, then it would be left unsettled. It would be considered that the large clan had made a mistake and made the wrong bet. Hua Ping was in such a situation. When she was young, she was taken fancy to by a large clan. Now that she had become a Yuanying, she met the conditions for marriage. However, because her horizons had been broadened and she had seen many things, she didn't want to sell herself, so she ran away. Chapter 1911. In the cultivation world, situations similar to this painting were not uncommon. Most people chose to resign themselves to adversity and meet the requirements of their families and sex, but there were also those who were more independent and had a strong sense of feminism, just like this painting. You could say that she was an ingrate who received kindness but didn't know how to repay it. This violated a cultivator's karma Tao heart. But you could also say that she pursued her own happiness and had a modern mindset of being independent and not being manipulated by others. Different positions meant different views. In the old woman's eyes, this was treason, but here, in this venue, this was exactly what the Kun cultivators wanted to change. They didn't want to treat themselves as goods, something that could be exchanged with value. There were many forms of repayment, so why did they have to gamble their lifetime's happiness? They could completely replenish resources, contribute to others, and even sacrifice their lives in a certain favor. This was true dignity. This was also one of the reasons why they had established such a chapter and intended to promote it to the entire universe. Tong Yan's expression was pleasant. She was very clear about the rights and wrongs of this. Since the establishment of this Kun Dao organization, similar troubles had never stopped. That family, that large family that provided resources, did they accept other rewards? Whether in terms of resources or in future changes? If they have a friendship with our chapter, there will always be more ways. Marrying a woman back is just one person's strength. Having a good relationship with an organization will allow you to borrow countless forces. The gains and losses are not difficult to choose. Where are there no women? It's still more important to have mutual feelings. Or is it that the son of that large family is so difficult that he can't find a Tao companion? Tong Yan's words were soft but firm, and it was clear that she had dealt with similar matters many times. Under normal circumstances, most people who came looking for trouble would go down the slope and not be able to persist. After all, this was a Yang spirit great cultivator, and a five-ringed Yang spirit. And behind her were so many sisters. Cultivators knew how to seek good fortune and avoid disaster. This simple principle was not difficult to understand. The old woman was a little hesitant. This was not easy to answer. Was it offending a large family? Or was it offending such a Kun Dao organization? So she glanced to the side. Another beautiful middle-aged woman beside her stood up. She was also a monarch. Obviously, this was the guest from the so-called large family who had come to help bring back the little wife. What is large in the cultivation world? The contract is large. Where the Tao heart was, the faith was there for the rest of his life. Hundreds of years of investment and countless amounts of effort, how could it be defined by resources alone? I won't say much about anything else. Just on the Great Tao fragment alone, we have provided powerful support for the painting screen. You can ask her if she can fuse with the Grand Tao fragments without our help. As for the descendants of my family, they are also Yuanying. Their cultivation level, character, and ability are enough to match. They are the most outstanding talents in my family, and they are not some ugly melon that can't find a wife. Our Ho-Hai family is willing to coexist peacefully with you sisters, but that doesn't mean we should give up our rights. This was a declaration of their position. He was determined to take the painting away. He would not accept any other methods. This made the Kuan-Dao hosts very uncomfortable. They had encountered countless similar cases. Generally speaking, if the soft approach didn't work, then the hard approach was also one of the options. But that was when the chapter had not yet been finalized. It was obviously inappropriate to do so in public. Because they were not a violent organization, everyone gathered here not for the hegemony of the universe, but for the future of Kuan-Dao. If others had different opinions, they would kill them. This was the Xianyuan sword sect, not their style. But although the chapter had been established, it was difficult to change their thinking in a short time. Their current way of doing things was basically the characteristics of their respective sections. For example, Yen Dai. Respecting the contract is the foundation of a cultivator. This point is correct. But the prerequisite is that the person who established the contract has enough ability to judge, not under the premise of being coerced or deceived. The contract of mortals before they reach adulthood can be annulled because they don't have enough experience to deal with the countless traps of this world. What, is our cultivation world inferior to the mortal world? As you said, the painting screen began to receive funding when she reached foundation establishment. She is like a mortal in her childhood. What does she know? What can she judge? Naturally, you so-called elders can do whatever you want to her. One of the most important aspects of our Kuan-Dao's mutual assistance is to guard against and put an end to similar incidents. We will return your resources and extend a hand to help you when you need it. This is already the utmost benevolence. If we were in the mortal world, we would charge you with deceiving a child and return your resources. We would first drag you into the yamen and beat you up. Tong Yen played the good cop, while Yen Dai played the bad cop. This was their usual strategy. The chapter was established in the grass, but they couldn't use their power to oppress others. They could only use some tricks. There was nothing they could do. That true monarch Hohai wasn't soft either. He knew what was going on. This little sister is overbearing and her words are sonorous. Where did you come from? Are you going to use force? Yen Dai's long, shapely eyebrows rose. Her usual charm instantly turned fierce. Trying to trick me? Xianyuan Sword School. If I tell you, what are you going to do? Are you going to threaten me? If you want to take away the painting screen, ask my sword first. Don't talk nonsense. On the side, Lu Xiaoyi rubbed his nose. This hot-tempered senior apprentice sister was fine during the conference. Once something happened, she immediately exposed her true colors as a swordsman. Do you still need women's rights when you're like this? White Lotus advised, Junior Apprentice Sister Dai, control your anger. Since we have rules now, we should act according to the rules. How about this, doesn't our chapter have a like and bad function? Everyone can use it to vote, and then we'll decide based on the results. At this time, the painting screen floated over. Because of this disciple, I've made things difficult for everyone, Hong Ying immediately interrupted her. This isn't your personal matter. It's everyone's matter. Isn't this the reason why we established this organization? If we ignore it because of this and that, then what's the point of the Kuan-Dao conference? Are the rules made purely for people to see? She immediately interrupted because she didn't want the painting screen to say anything wrong. There was a fact that in the process of foundation establishment to Yuanying, there were definitely many secrets that couldn't be spoken of. For example, having one's own lover outside. But these things weren't important now. What was important was that the first vote of the conference's rules had to be completed successfully. No matter whether there was anything wrong with the painting screen or not, they had to ignore it. It was no longer a personal matter. This was the first time the Kuan-Dao conference was acting under the restrictions of the conference's rules. They couldn't have a strong start and a weak finish. Thus, Tong Yen sent out a message in the conference's rules, allow the painting screen to follow the family back to complete the marriage. This message appeared in the minds of every Kuan cultivator, and everyone made their own choice. A black cloud lit up. A negative review. The results were out. Chapter 1912. Since everyone had made their choice, Tong Yan did not play the good cop anymore. Instead, his face sank. The meeting has decided. This contract is invalid. It was set up by Huadeng when he was young and ignorant. All the karma will be borne by our organization. If you go back and reply like this, there is no possibility of compromise. The old woman from White River clan was silent, but the beautiful middle-aged woman from Hohai was unwilling. The meeting of the Slaughter Temple is nothing but a spontaneous meeting that has not been approved through any formal channels. Not to mention there is no decree. There is no decree. Even in your own domain, your own orthodoxies and sects do not have any authorization. This is just a private meeting under the guise of a private meeting. What rules and authority do you have? Nun Red Cherry Blossom looked at her apologetically and calmly. You are right. Our meeting this time is indeed not approved by anyone. It is just like a self-organized temple in the moral world. Is that what you think? People like you will never understand the future of the Qingdao. I will also not explain to those who are willing to belittle themselves. I know you only look at short-term benefits, at the present moment. Then take a look. There are thousands of sisters here, but none of them agree to Huadeng going back with you. I am afraid you will have to think carefully about how to persuade them. The beautiful middle-aged woman took a deep breath. She needed to make a decision. Should she offend this newly formed loose organization? Or give up on another mysterious and powerful organization? Actually, she did not need to think too much. She always believed that an organization like the Qingdao would never have the ability to act. It was loose. Helping each other would mostly stop at words, but in the heart. Just like what people often said about morality, what problems could it really solve? So, I have a contract with me. If you want to break the contract, then according to the rules of the cultivation world of the universe, it is nothing more than a battle. If we are not a match, then it is because we are not capable. The contract will not be mentioned again. If you are not capable, then please do not walk to a dead end. Put down Huadeng, a path of return. If we meet in the future, we will still be friends. It was a very normal method. The disputes of the cultivation world were nothing more than negotiating first. If they could not, then they would fight. Only at the last moment would they decide life and death. The method proposed by Hohai True Monarch was to fight. White Lotus laughed. We of the Qingdao will never refuse a challenge. Do you want to come by yourself or invite a friend? The host is the guest. But they won't take advantage of you in terms of numbers. Every sect and power here is a well-known character in the eastern sky. You don't need to doubt it. True Monarch Hohai's expression was solemn. Even though she had already made her choice, she didn't want to make their relationship too bad. After all, the sects here weren't simple, they were existences that could destroy worlds. Xian Yuan, 3 pure ones, supreme, which one of them wouldn't be able to shake the small world? She still persisted in her opinion, not because her domain was strong enough, but because her domain was weak enough. So weak that if these tyrannical forces really did something, they would be suspected of bullying the weak. Moreover, the helpers she had recruited were really strong, so strong that she could even forget about domain overlords like the fifth ring. It's not any of the three of us. A grain of rice does not dare to compete for splendor. No matter how ignorant Tabby was, he wasn't arrogant enough to think of provoking Tai Sui. I won't hide it from you sisters, there were 2 other Qianxiu who came with us. Because it wasn't convenient for them to come here, they waited far away. Our idea is that if everything goes smoothly, then there's no need to say anything. If we're forced to fight, then we'll invite our 2 friends. We'll be frank here, and we ask for your understanding, sisters. Even though this middle-aged woman's attitude was firm, her words were very polite and didn't provoke disgust. This was a necessary quality for a long time in the cultivation world. Otherwise, if you didn't keep your mouth shut, the more you went, the fewer friends you had and the more enemies you had, that would be a disaster. It was also because of her attitude and confidence in her own strength. Even though they were all Qinxiu, since they were born in a place like the fifth ring, How could they be weak and not dare to accept a challenge? Hangi people had been killed and beasts had been slaughtered. Even without looking at their stinky skins, they were all unyielding people of the fifth ring. Tong Yan, White Fuzi, Red Cherry, and Yen Dai, the few leaders, touched their divine senses and all nodded. They indeed needed this kind of opportunity to show off their might at the Kuandao gathering. Only then could they let others know that the current Kuandao organization was different from the past. They could also draw their swords. Tong Yan laughed boldly and stuck out his chest, his imposing manner like two peaks. Fine. It's just two Kunshiu. We have me, junior sister White Fuzi, junior sister Red Cherry, junior sister Yen Dai. A sharp female voice suddenly interrupted from the side. And me, junior sister Mei Fenger, the middle-aged woman, true monarch Hohai, was also stunned. This voice was very special. It was clearly a female's voice, but it gave people a very awkward feeling, as if a rooster had been choked by its neck. Only Yen Dai understood. How is this Mei Fenger? There was no gap at all. This shameless person. Tong Yan was startled and immediately understood that Lu Xiaoyi was afraid that something would happen to them. That was why he added himself in. Of course, when it came to fighting, no one here was this Lord Lu's opponent, but it didn't seem to be to that extent, right? Wasn't it just because he found two self-righteous helpers in the small world and thought that he could fight against a fifth ring Yang God Kunshiu? They would never understand that in the fifth ring, once a battle started, it didn't matter whether they were Kunshiu or Qianxiu. Did they think they were soft persimmons? They had to punish their prejudices. But since they had already spoken, she couldn't refuse. Even if it's the five of us, any two of us won't have a second chance. Victory and defeat will determine the result. Both sides agreed. True monarch Hohai sent out a talisman to summon them. On the Kuandao side, everyone was very relaxed. This was just an accident for the Kuandao conference. Yen Dai was very dissatisfied. Little E. What are you doing? You've been wandering around outside for 2,000 years. Do you still lack a fight? Let me tell you, if Xin Yuan has to send someone, it's me. You can't fight with me. Lu Xiaoyi couldn't say too much. He was just vaguely guessing. Add another layer of insurance. They're all little Yi's sisters. You can't refuse my good intentions, right? Yen Dai might indeed be his sister, but in terms of age, which of the other three wasn't 1 or 2,000 years older than him? When he was still drinking milk, they were already at least in gods. But women were just so strange. The three of them were very satisfied with such an unreasonable title. It was as if they were a few thousand years older after being called like this. It was also miraculous. Tong Yan had been in a high position for a long time, so his personality was the most mature. There's no hurry. Let's wait for their two so-called friends to come first. This is the first battle after our Kuandao conference was established. There can't be any mistakes. Chapter 1913. For cultivators, a perfect grand event would never be separated from a battle of magical powers. Wasn't it a peaceful method? There had to be excitement, gambling, and danger. Even the women had the same mentality. Therefore, the entire Tu-Guan venue was immersed in joyous anticipation. In their opinion, with those 5 ringed Yang gods on the rostrum, how many threats could they find in the world? They were looking forward to such a battle to pave the way for the rise of Kuandao. This kind of mood was understandable, but it was not appropriate. Lu Xiaoyi shook his head. To go further in the union of Kuandao, it relies on internal needs. It is the power that has been suppressed since Kuandao began to cultivate. It is even the desire of women to change their status since the beginning of mankind. It should be a quiet one, not a vigorous one, and definitely not an attempt to change it through war. A few Kun cultivators nodded and considered how to include Lu Xiaoyi's core philosophy. This was a guiding principle. The battle between men and women, no matter the outcome, was destined to harm human society. There could be no victory or defeat between them. Just like when parents turned against each other in a family, the one who would be harmed would always be the child. Lu Xiaoyi thought very far. Because he had the thoughts of his previous life, he was very much in favor of women's self-reliance and self-improvement. In fact, it was more for those middle and low-level Kun cultivators, and even the main purpose was for ordinary mortal women. There is only one ultimate goal. Ordinary women in the moral world. This is the direction you should work hard in. This is the ultimate goal. You may never reach it, but at least you have a direction. In fact, since stepping on the path of cultivation, the situation of women has already begun to change. The higher the realm, the greater the change. For example, who would dare to look at you as if you were a woman? I admire you very much, because in fact, what you are fighting for is not your own interests. This is the real reason why I am willing to help. White Lotus smiled. Little Yi's mouth is really sweet. I wonder how many young women will be charmed by Little Yi. Your disguise is not good. If you are interested, I will use some means to dress you up well. It will definitely be fake and not easy to be noticed. Then, Little Yi, do you have any suggestions? Lu Xiaoyi sighed. Try to hold as few meetings as possible. It was easy to arouse the vigilance of people with ulterior motives. After all, your organization is still too weak. Take a look at that true monarch Ho Hai. He brought people to cause trouble at the right time. Although he appeared to be very rational, who knows what he's hiding behind the scenes? And her so-called two friends, who are they? You dare to provoke us outside the fifth ring space? Would a normal person do that? The right thing to do is to negotiate privately and not make such a big fuss about it. Everyone nodded. This was probably the reason why Lu Xiaoyi had stepped forward to join the waiting list. If we don't have a gathering, we won't give them a chance to cause trouble. If we are scattered in the universe, how can we deal with you? It was impossible for any faction to always be harmless. There would always be a target, and there would always be obstacles. Even if the situation was special, it was still unavoidable. Let's hope that we can survive the most dangerous phase by breaking up into smaller groups. It won't matter anymore when we're fully grown. This might be Lu Xiaoyi's only chance to influence the women. After this, the growth of this organization could only be left to fate. Hopefully, he could achieve his desired goal. He couldn't always maintain his presence in this organization. Things would go against his wishes. Not long after, auras approached from afar, getting closer and closer. The closer they got, the more unsightly their expressions became. Two of them were half-immortals. Red Cherry Blossom Nun looked at him. Little E, you already knew? Lu Xiaoyi smiled bitterly. I guessed it. After the inner and outer scenic skies are open to these monsters, the cultivation world of the origin world will inevitably be their world. There will be more in the future, let me do the duel. Actually, they might not be able to threaten you, but a sea turtle will fight a river shrimp, and a frog will fight a toad. Since they're half-immortals, I should go. Everyone wanted to fight for the remaining spot, but Yen Dai had the best reason. They're all primordial soul cultivators. We don't need to spoil them. We'll send out our primordial souls too. I'll fight for the other spot. Little E, I can't compare to you. Can you handle it? Lu Xiaoyi patted his chest. What are you talking about? Of course, I can handle it. Two auras arrived not far away and stood still. They didn't say much. The one who came out to talk was only Master Ho Hai. She was very curious. Facing two half-immortal monsters of the exterior, how would these five-ring people choose? Would they still have the attitude of being number one in the world? Of course, there was a gap between half-immortals and young gods, and it wasn't a small gap. Especially when it came to understanding certain key Dao realms. Half-immortals had taken this step, but young gods hadn't. This was a gap. However, considering that these half-immortal monsters weren't real half-immortals, their primordial souls were weaker in terms of cultivation, so the gap was narrowed. The most obvious difference was in rebirth. In other words, young gods had the opportunity to make mistakes. This narrowed the gap again, so there was a high probability that the outcome of this battle would be 50-50. This was also a result she was happy to see. She had achieved her goal of leading people, and she wouldn't become mortal enemies with the five-ringed people. The most ingenious thing was that because young gods could be reborn, as long as they used the rebirth method in battle, the situation wouldn't look good. Although it was a tie in the end, if this five-ringed young god was killed a few times, where would he put his face? This was Master Hohai's idea. He wanted to take revenge for being looked down upon. My two friends have arrived. Do you want to follow the rules? Please take out the rules. What we mean is that since there are only two people, it's not good to split the two battles, right? It's troublesome, and it's easy to end in a tie. Why don't we settle it with one battle? It doesn't matter if you send 2 or 5 people. These 2 people must know how to work together. That was everyone's judgment. Every step they took was calculated carefully. As Lu Xiaoyi said, their true origins were probably not simple. Originally, Tong Yan and the others didn't intend to go too far. It seemed unlucky to see a bloody disaster in the first meeting of the Qingdao. But now, they couldn't care less. Since they had ulterior motives, they could only treat it as a blood oath for the sake of the rules. There was nothing to say. Release the evil dogs. Tong Yan narrowed his eyes. Oh, 2 primordial soul perfected lords. In that case, we seniors would be too embarrassed to fight. We, the 5-ringed people, have always been fair and just in the universe. How about this, junior sister Yendai? She found it funny. This immoral person had to say there were no gaps, so she couldn't even announce her name. Lu Xiaoyi took a step forward, still speaking in that strange voice, senior sister and I will go out to fight. We're all primordial soul perfected lords. Let's fight. Chapter 1914. Immortal Hohai was astonished. The 5th ring people were arrogant to the core. They were still putting on airs even at this point. Even the Yang spirit might not be complete. Were they looking for trouble by sending 2 primordial spirits? He asked again, is this the only battle? No next time? Tong Yan said firmly, this is the only battle with thousands of witnesses. Are you afraid that we'll go back on our word? Immortal Hohai wanted to say more. She felt that this was unreal. However, the 2 sides had already moved closer to the center of the planet cluster. This was also the place where the foreign species had perished. Even now, there was still a faint murderous aura floating in the air. Lu Xiaoyi and Yen Dai walked forward slowly. Senior sister, this seems to be the first time we're fighting side by side. What do you think? Are you going to be in front or behind? Are you going to be in front or behind? Yen Dai spat. Nothing good comes out of a dog's mouth. I don't care. I haven't fought a half immoral before. This time, I'm going to fight to my heart's content. What strategy? Do swordsmen need to pay attention to this when fighting? Just play with your life. Little E, I'm telling you, I'm going to have fun. I'll leave the rest to you. Didn't you kill everyone in the battle with the exterior masters? Can you control such a small battle? Lu Xiaoyi was speechless. This senior sister usually seemed to have a lot of thoughts, but once she started fighting, she would reveal her true colors. Yen Dai's meaning was very clear. She wanted to play to her heart's content and win in the end. As for how to do it, she would leave it to him to decide. He sighed. Don't worry, senior sister. I'm best at wiping people's buttocks from behind. I guarantee that you'll feel comfortable and comfortable. After wiping once, you'll want to do it again. After wiping your buttocks, you'll want to do it all over. Lu Xiaoyi was still in the mood to joke around. This was because of his strong confidence and his experience in fighting. The other side was also discussing nervously because they realized that the situation was somewhat different from what they had imagined. The other side also had a half-immortal. Extreme Yang, you know more about this part of the universe and the 5 rings. Where did this half-immortal come from? This doesn't match our intelligence. Old LV, what are you panicking for? It's not that ferocious, Lu, why are you so afraid? A person like him would never disguise himself as a woman. This was the root of his pride. However, the Xianyuan Sword School had indeed produced another half-immortal, and his name was Yen Chang. I heard that he went to the interior sky, but it seems that he didn't go there. Or is he back for the conference? What's there to worry about a half-immortal who's only been in the interior realm for a few decades? As long as she's a woman, she won't be able to escape from us. Just do what you need to do. Both of them are sword cultivators. Be careful of their first 3 axes. They couldn't see through Lu Xiaoyi's virtual phoenix body. This was all due to White Fuzi's methods. Moreover, at their level, all kinds of concealment had already reached the peak. If they didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see through it. Who would think in this direction? Yan Dai was the first to rush forward. This woman was extremely arrogant. His actions were done without fear. For other orthodoxies, this might be a path to death, but for swordsmen, this was a way to fully display their strength. Lu Xiaoyi was here to wipe her ass, but to be honest, he didn't know where to start. To wipe the ass of a female swordsman who was flying around in the sky and was constantly in danger, unless you transformed into a Shu Bao. Lu Xiaoyi had no interest in constantly guessing her next move. The only thing he could do, which was also the most efficient thing, was to help her attack. Attack until the opponent couldn't react, and naturally achieve the goal of wiping her ass. The opponent was very strong. This kind of strength wasn't completely reflected in a head-on collision, but in some details. For example, the flying sword would always mysteriously deviate, and its aim would often be 70 or 80% perfect, which would affect the following combo. In the Tao realm, one would often feel that one had exerted all their strength, but it didn't seem to be effective. It felt like one's feet were stuck in the mud, but couldn't get out, and couldn't find the right way out. Therefore, Yan Dai knew that this was the reason why she took this step. It was the difference in level. In the long run, she could only sink deeper and deeper into the quagmire until she couldn't extricate herself. Of course, this kind of feeling was also gradual, because her flying sword still forced the opponent to not use all his strength to counterattack. In just a few breaths of time, Yan Dai understood the gap between her and her opponent. This wasn't brainless, but her purpose was to see the difference between a demi-immortal and a sun god. Now, she finally understood that the sun god's strength lay in its deeper cultivation base and the feeling of powerlessness that couldn't be killed, but she could fully display her powerful attack power. Demi-immortal monsters were different. You knew that you could kill them once, but they were standing in front of you, and you felt powerless. Relatively speaking, she would rather deal with the sun god. The power of taking this step was mysterious, and she felt like she didn't know how to exert her strength. In just a few breaths of time, she made her own judgment. Then, a change occurred. A sword dragon appeared beside her sword dragon. It was the same scale, the same method, and even the same Tao realm, but the effect was completely different. It was the pinnacle of insight, attacking the enemy's vital points, and a sure kill move faintly revealed in the circling. The 2 sword dragons were entangled and spiraling, and they were vivid and lifelike. It was as if they were 2 dragons in heat. There was even an extra protrusion between one of their hind legs. Outsiders would think that this was Xuanyuan's double sword combination technique, but how could they know the ambiguity and wretchedness of it? Yan Dai was annoyed. This thing didn't care about the occasion. Be serious. We're fighting. We're all sword dragons, so of course there's a difference between male and female. Is there a problem? Lu Xiaoyi didn't care at all. He used his sword dragon to guide the opponent and let her familiarize herself with the changes in the opponent's Tao realm, the mysteries of the technique, and the tactical traps. Gradually, under Lu Xiaoyi's lead, Yan Dai's sword dragon regained some vitality and became more lively, more dangerous, and more substantial. Lu Xiaoyi even taught her sword techniques. "You're a dragon, and I'm a dragon. There are many fiendish swords. There are many swords, and they're as hot as fire. Twist this sword river into a cornbread and mold it into a radish. Break the two together and mix them with essence." Yan Dai turned a deaf ear to him. She was very clear that this thing had a personality where the more you annoyed him, the more energetic he became. In fact, he was crazy when faced with an opportunity. If he was really given a chance, he would definitely wither. She only needed to look at Yan Cheng to know this. This was a rare opportunity to use two half-immortals as whetstones. Although his words were unreliable and his sword techniques were a mess, she benefited a lot from the things contained in the sword dragon. On the whole, she was the one who decided the direction, but in terms of thinking, she started to change her routine. This was a kind of progress. If she didn't come into contact with such an opponent, she would never know the limitations of her sword technique. But this kind of guidance, this little bastard. Chapter 1915. Yang Ji felt very depressed. Because they didn't have a proper cooperation. His Tao state was the pure Yang Tao realm. It wasn't among the 36 innate great Daos, but it was the most famous one among the postnatal great Daos. It could be said that if the great Daos changed after the change of era, it wouldn't be strange for the pure Yang Tao realm to be the innate great Daos. The pure Yang Tao realm was the only one among the innate great Daos that could only be cultivated by men. Could women cultivate it? Maybe, but in the end, they might grow a beard. But women had their own in sunflower Tao realm, which was another matter. But in terms of the essence of the Tao realm, cultivators who cultivated the pure Yang Tao realm could achieve twice the result with half the effort against Kun cultivators. This was something decided by nature. Old LV was the bane of cultivation. It was the combination of the three most extreme great Daos of the innate great Daos, killing, destruction, and life and death. Not only did it require talent, but it also required one's own luck. The bane of life was even more extreme than the swordsman when fighting with others, because it only had one external manifestation, which was to kill the opponent, and it didn't care about its own situation at all. The combination of the two was the most effective against most Kun cultivators. The choice of the pure Yang Tao realm, and the bane of life, was extremely overwhelming. The combination of the two was also very famous in the exterior realm. After coming to the main world, they had fought a few times and were always successful. Their opponents were all Yang spirit cultivators, and they died without knowing why. Therefore, they didn't care too much about their opponents this time. The only one they had to be careful of was the swordsman Lu Xiong. As long as they avoided him, they could go anywhere. They heard that this person was the sect leader, so he couldn't just wander around casually. This was also a women's conference. Lao Lu tried to kill Yan Dai a few times, but it was always broken by the other swordsman when the bane was condensing. They were both half-immortals, but this smoky puppet seemed to be especially sensitive to danger. Lao Lu knew that if he dared to attack, he might not be able to escape from this smoky puppet's attack. This was a half-immortal who was completely different from her experience. She had sharp eyes and vicious means. She actually used her companion's life to lure him to attack, and then used a fatal attack. Half-immortal for primordial spirit? Wishful thinking. Extreme Yang had to remind him. Old Lu. This could also be a strategy. That smoky puppet might be trying to use this method to restrict your heavenly calamity star. He might not have the ability to kill you in one attack. And don't forget, there's still me. He couldn't go too far. Because the one who was in danger was old LV, not him. He didn't have the right Taoist him. It Yan Chen Ti himmed. Master. Master T no is Master T no Master T. They came here under the pretense of helping a friend and helping to bring back the painted screen, but in fact, they had another purpose, which was not enough to reveal to outsiders. SS Masters is Master SSSSSSS Master S Masters Great Master SSS, especially when the opponent was a Kuan cultivator, he could use his Master's pure Yang S influence to slowly make the opponent lose the ability to struggle. This was the mysterious suppression and complementation between Yin and Yang. It was a law determined by the heavenly Tao. It was the tyranny of Yang against Yin. Of course, Yin and Yang were balanced, but if two Kuan cultivators didn't cultivate a special Yin sunflower Tao realm, it would be very difficult for them to resist his pure Yang. How could a swordsman cultivate Yin sunflower? The plan was very good, but the execution wasn't satisfactory. He was very effective in suppressing the primordial spirit Yen Dai, but it had almost no effect on Smoky Puppet. His understanding was that since they were both half-immortals, they had their own unique Tao realms operation, so they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. This was a normal confrontation. He also had Extreme Yang S Master Tao realm. To be able to call his Extreme Yang, it could be seen how confident he was in this aspect. What he needed to do now was to arouse the fighting spirit of his companion, Lao Lu. Lao Lu wasn't quite the same as him. When facing the swordsman, who was also a half-immortal, he was somewhat unable to let go of his hands and feet. In the several great battles in the eastern sky, the sword vein had played a huge role in them. This also increased the psychological pressure of each orthodoxy when dealing with the Xianyuan swordsman in disguise. Especially Lu Xiaoyi among them, he had become a taboo in one-on-one duels. To Lao Lu, he had only come here to obtain a Tao fragment, nothing more. If he had known that he would clash with the Xianyuan swordsman, then he might as well not have come. This was the mentality of the four people on the battlefield. Each of them was different, but only Yen Dai's was the purest. Convergence, separation. Lu Xiaoyi wasn't stupid enough to actually follow behind his senior apprentice sister. However, his sword dragon was there, so it was the same as him being there. This meant that in addition to Yen Dai's hundreds of thousands of sword lights, there were hundreds of thousands of sword lights following closely behind her, guiding her in the direction of her attacks, making up for her lack of defense, and teaching her how to attack the half-immortal more effectively. Yen Dai was the weakest link among the four, but now she was the most unbridled link. Because of her impudence, she fully displayed the offensive nature of the swordsman, and actually became the one who could clearly influence the situation of the battlefield. This also allowed Extreme Yang and Lao Lu to see an opportunity within. This swordsman half-immortal seems to value his junior apprentice sister a lot. After a period of battle, Lao Lu finally straightened out his mentality. Fainting wasn't the best option. Since they were already facing each other, he couldn't think too much. With his heavenly calamity star orthodoxy, he shouldn't be like this. Normally, he was also a decisive killer, vicious and merciless person. However, his ferocious nature was somewhat suppressed in front of the swordsman. Until now, when he saw that the two swordsmen didn't seem to pose a fatal threat to them, the pressure was gone, and his ferocious heart rose. Extreme Yang nodded. He had finally waited for his comrade to regain his confidence. Now was the best time to make a move. There were too many things to consider in a battle, and the prerequisite for victory was to straighten out all of his mentality. Later, I will activate the Extreme Yang Dao realm. There's no need to talk about that Yen Dai, she's not worth mentioning. Our target is that Yen Cheng. I don't know how long the Extreme Yang Dao realm will suppress her, but a conservative estimate is that she will need at least 3 breaths of time to break through and return to normal. I will use the Extreme Yang Dao realm's 3 incineration. You have to control the tempo and try to end it in one go. 2 half-immortals against 1 half-immortal and 1 nascent soul cultivator, we've dragged it out for too long. Lao Lu nodded. 3 breaths was the window of time for him to attack. It was already too long, and 1 breath was enough. On the battlefield, the sword lights were still crisscrossing, and the people were gone without a trace. The 4 figures suddenly separated and reunited on the battlefield, as if this was a performance that both sides had discussed beforehand. However, when the map was exhausted, the dagger would eventually appear. Both sides didn't want to fight a war of attrition. Chapter 1916. Among the spectators on the rostrum, everyone was calm and composed. This was because the outcome of this battle was already predetermined. With Lu Xiaoyi here, the two half-immortals would not be able to overturn the situation. He really takes care of his senior sister. White Lotus laughed. Hong Ying continued, knowing how to take care of his senior sister is a kind of quality. Tong Yan covered her mouth and laughed, using senior sister as bait. But it seems too perverted. White Lotus did not care. Bright colors are always better than dark colors. I always think, if one day, all the men in the world are not perverted, what kind of situation would that be? Hong Ying's words were shocking. Then women will become perverted. Tong Yan shook her head. This big powers character was indeed unrestrained. Lu Xiaoyi keenly felt the change in his opponent's mentality. For him, the battle was already integrated into his bones and blood. He did not need his opponent's Tao realm to change. In a normal round, a trace of feeling arose spontaneously. Little E. Are they going to do something? You must protect senior sister's safety. Lu Xiaoyi praised in his heart, as expected of Xuanyuan's disciple. Her perception was really good. Even if she did not take a step, she had a natural instinct for danger. Senior sister, you are so sensitive. However, it seems like the other party will not target you. They want to deal with the man under your skirt. Yan Dai had long been immune to these words. I plan to deal with the one with the haze on his face. Lu Xiaoyi did not care, as senior sister wishes. Yang Ji's fingers moved, and the 9 folds of Yang Pass in his hand was like a tidal wave. The hidden power surged, and each wave was higher than the previous one. It not only attacked the body, but also the mind. It displayed Qian Xiu's talent to the extreme. Old Lu jumped up and stepped on the 4 divisions. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise appeared one by one. The battle suddenly became tense. The 9 folds of Yang Pass's Tao realm attack combined with the 4 divisions' imprisonment made the space of the battlefield stagnate instantly. Yan Dai was not willing to be restrained. The sword dragon roared and rushed left and right. His Dao realm changed back and forth, and he searched for the trace of the sword that would decide the outcome of the battle. Only Lu Xiaoyi was still there. Hundreds of thousands of sword lights were still cooperating with senior sister, as if he was completely unaware of the upcoming changes. The 9 stacks of Yang Pass, by the time it reached the 9th stack, it had already taken on a physical form. The pure Yang art had almost controlled the entire battlefield. Even the spectating fairies could faintly feel the suppression of the Dao realm around them. Stacking 9 transformations. As soon as the space was released, the realm of pure Yang suddenly disappeared, and only a Taoist body appeared out of thin air. With the pure Yang Dao as the body, the demolishing realm had its limits. All the earth cultivators in the Planet Massacre Temple realized that the yin qi in their bodies was being mobilized involuntarily. With a wisp of Yang as the main force, all yin qi would obey. When the extreme realm was born, the burning void of extreme Yang appeared. First, it burned the body, second, it burned the technique, and third, it burned the spirit. The target of the extreme fire was none other than the carefree Lu Xiaoyi. At the same time, the 4 symbols under Lao Lu's feet shattered. The 4 beasts combined and turned into a star, covering Lu Xiaoyi and smashing down on his head. Lu Xiaoyi did not panic. He took a step forward, and with the extreme fire burning his body, his eyes were filled with a strange light. He only stared at the heavenly calamity lone star that was smashing down. At the same time, the sword river flowed and wrapped Yan Dai in it. At the same time, it shattered, and a void space was dug out from the extreme Yang realm. Yan Dai seized this rare opportunity. Where the flying sword pointed, it reversed the dust light. In a flash, life and death were immediately decided. The strength of the heavenly calamity Lone Star did not lie in that star. Instead, it was the killing aura on the star. It was the monstrous intent of death condensed from the destruction of life and death. Often, before the star even fell, the half-immortal fate users who had taken a step forward were already taken by the intent of death, and their souls returned to their homeland. However, this kind of intent of death could not resist Lu Xiaoyi's gaze. That was the pinnacle of slaughter. It was the integration of countless evil souls that had died in his hands. It was the eternal victory in the past life and death. Lao Lu's intent of death was meaningless in front of a killing freak like Lu Xiaoyi. With a wave of his hand, he smashed the star that no longer had the intent of death with a punch, and it was like falling dust. Lao Lu's heavenly calamity Lone Star was unable to take the other party in. Just as he felt it, he knew it was not good. The blow came faster than he had imagined. There was no sword rain that covered the sky, only the mystery of the reverse dust light. As a powerful half-immortal, his defense after his power was exhausted was just barely satisfactory. He was smashed into dust by the sword light that Yan Dai had been scheming for a long time. At this moment, Lao Lu could not even completely understand what had happened. However, there were also some who understood the truth. The Extreme Yang triple incineration of Extreme Yang was only a half-immortal swordsman. Under the illumination of the extreme fire, it should have been the biggest loophole. 3 inches below the navel, the weak point of a Kun cultivator, the extreme fire actually could not drill through. Because there was no gap. In a flash, he finally understood. Yin Deng? Mei Feng? No gap? This person was Lu Xiaoyi. Therefore, Lao Lu's killing power could not be suppressed at all. In terms of killing people, who could compare to this swordsman whose hands were stained with blood? Therefore, the extreme fire could not burn him. Without the suppression of Yang against Yin, how could he possibly defeat the biggest freak in the interior realm in terms of the Tao realm? He was careless. He did not thoroughly understand this guy's background. But who would have thought that such a person would actually dress up as a woman? Was it not embarrassing? Millions of rays of light suddenly rose in front of him. It was an endless stream of sword light. He knew that he already had no chance. He could not even escape. He also finally understood why a mere Qin Dao convention needed 2 half-immortals to cause trouble. As long as it was related to this fierce person, it would not be a small matter. Under the extreme Yang, he dashed forward without any regard for his own safety. This was his final glory. Unfortunately, he had come to the wrong place and met the wrong person. 2 Dao dissipation celestial phenomena rose one after the other. This was the first time that everyone present had seen the Dao dissipation of a half-immortal. It did not seem to be any different. There was no heavenly sound of grief, no mountains and rivers weeping, no stars shaking, nothing at all. As it turned out, half-immortals were not immortals. They were only slightly stronger mortals. True Monarch Hohai was stunned on the spot, including the other 2. They had imagined countless results, but they did not think that it would be so tragic. The 5 rings continued to be strong. Even if the invader was a half-immortal, they still used their coldness to provoke them. She was a bit regretful. The 5 rings would definitely not deliberately take revenge on the Hohai family, but at the right time, the 3 of them still did not see that there was no gap in this. Because they were not familiar with the 5 rings, and even less familiar with Xian Yuan. Tong Yan looked at them and said indifferently, "The result is out. Do you have any objections?" True Monarch Hohai bitterly licked his lips. "No objections. The contract has been destroyed. The picture screen and the Hohai family are no longer related." The 3 of them came full of confidence, but left in an abnormally embarrassing state. Because in the thousands of eyes, they were overestimating themselves and not adapting to the situation. It was finally quiet. Everyone's gazes returned to the 2 victors, especially one of them. No matter how slow they were, the 5 rings cultivators were very clear about who could so easily kill 2 half-immortals. No wonder he was so unfamiliar. No wonder he was so strange. No gap? Did he think that everyone could not tell? Chapter 1917. P.S. It's the end of the month. I'm asking for a wave of monthly votes. Life is hard, and I rarely open my mouth. Everyone, please give me some face and throw me a few votes. Thank you for your support. Several young gods were full of smiles. The result was a little bloody, but bloody was nothing to the people of the Fifth Ring Road. Since it was the Xianyuan swordsman, how could it not be bloody? Everyone here was on the same side, so Lu Xiaoyi's identity couldn't be hidden. At least, everyone in the Fifth Ring Road knew about it. Those who came from afar had some doubts, but after asking around a little, they found out that the only guest of this year's Qundao conference was the most famous guest, an interior half-immortal, among them. It had to be said that his cross-dressing immediately received the approval of almost all the Qun cultivators. This was the reason why he had decided to cross-dress. How could they judge whether a person treated all the Qun cultivators equally? There was no special way, but if a person whose reputation was like thunder in the universe was willing to cross-dress and talk freely in front of everyone, under such circumstances, what was there to doubt? Not to mention that he had relieved the Qun cultivators of their resentment. How could a half-immortal make the Qun cultivators submit? Since he had been exposed, he should strike while the iron was hot. There was no need to wait until the final announcement of the guest. In everyone's mind, there was a green cloud hanging above the green cloud. Above the green cloud were 3 shining golden words, women's friend. This was the future friends of the Qun cultivators, those who were willing to lend a helping hand to the rights of women. Now, there was only one name on the green cloud roll, Lu Xiaoyi. The name was still vague because it was nominated by Tong Yan and hadn't received everyone's approval. They had their own rules, and without everyone's approval, it couldn't be true. White Lotus looked at him, her eyes full of smiles, and shouted to all the Qun cultivators present. Next, let's welcome the Xianyuan sect leader, interior half-immortal, cigarette but Taoist Lu Xiaoyi, to give a speech. This couldn't be considered a rule, but as the first person of the women's friend, he had to express his thoughts, reflect on the past, talk about the present, and think about the future. He also had to thank this and that. The earth cultivators applauded like a tide. They had admired this person for a long time, and now that they saw him, they felt especially close. In the eyes of outsiders, his current appearance was neither fish nor fowl, but in the eyes of the women, it was the greatest respect for them. A celebrity's speech was always something to look forward to. Lu Xiaoyi was once again forced to do something beyond his ability. Of course, he was thick-skinned and had thick makeup. There was no awkwardness. What should I say? It was different from the iron-blooded words spoken at the summit. Those words seemed very inappropriate here. Life should be joyful. Why should it be so heavy? Especially for these women who wanted freedom and independence. He stood in the center of the two temple, facing the thousands of expectant and kind gazes, pretending to be shy. I'm not good with words. Why don't I dance for everyone? The music had been prepared long ago. It was a comical piece of music made by someone who had nothing to do. It was very simple for a cultivator. It was nothing more than combining the audio of various musical instruments. He bowed slightly and announced the name of the dish. I'll perform a song for everyone, Little Apple. The accompaniment sounded. Lu Xiaoyi shook his waist and buttocks awkwardly. The earth cultivators laughed until they fell. The lyrics were very happy. I planted a seed, it finally bore fruit, today is a great day, plucking the stars for you, pulling down the moon for you, letting the sun rise for you every day, turning into a candle, burning myself just to illuminate you, giving you everything I have, as long as you're happy, you make my tomorrows meaningful. Although life is short, I'll love you forever, I'll never leave you, you are my little apple. No matter how much I love you, it's never too much. The lyrics were very vulgar. Very straightforward. Very simple. But it was this kind of vulgarity that made this song penetrate people's hearts. It couldn't be more appropriate here. The tune was strange, but it was very pleasant to listen to. The key was that it was very happy. It described the matter between a yin and yang man in the most straightforward words. Yes, doing women's rights was not abandoning one's husband and son. These were two different things. A person who could write such a small song must be a person of character. Although his voice was still a little tone-deaf and his dancing was even more awkward and laughable, to be able to dance in front of thousands of earth cultivators, he must have a free and easy heart from the bottom of his heart. The song came from the mind, and the dance came from the heart. Tong Yan made a timely suggestion. A line of words appeared in the chapter, "Is Lord Lu's dancing pleasing to your eyes?" It was a sea of negative comments. Another line of words appeared, "Lord Lu is the #1 friend of women." Is that right? There was no difference in the vast expanse of white. They were all likes. Lu Xiaoyi's moment was the most glorious moment in his cultivation life. Because there had never been so many people cheering for him with sincerity and without pretense. It was every cultivator's wish to be recognized by others. But it was very difficult to be recognized from the bottom of one's heart, from sincerity, and not by force or the threat of a flying sword. Lu Xiaoyi had achieved this. It was different from the bloodlust at the dome. It was more joy, understanding, and discovering the beautiful side of the cultivation world. This was very important. Perhaps Lu Xiaoyi hadn't completely realized it and was only doing it based on instinct, but some things in the dark were indeed quietly changing. The heavenly Tao's measurement of successors wasn't completely based on one's hard strength. That was only a part of it. It was the cornerstone of survival. There were many other things that could determine the stability and continued development of the cultivation world of the universe. Saints couldn't be, butchers couldn't be, and no one knew the proper balance. The will of the heavens was unfathomable. Now, the earth cultivators began to truly celebrate. There was a victory factor, and there was also an entertainment factor. Of course, life had to be lived to the fullest. Lu Xiaoyi had become the most sought-after dance partner. Of course, the square dance he had learned from his previous life was too low-end here. Since they were called fairies, dancing gracefully was a basic requirement. Which earth cultivator here didn't have a lithe figure, floating like an immortal? Their small waists could be twisted into a fried dough twist. They weren't like Lu Xiaoyi, who was as hard as a bench when he swung his hips, and swung his hands like he was swinging a sledgehammer. But he was still the most sought after. He was the lead dancer. Even if he was dancing a completely different kind of dance from the fairies, the happiness still continued. He suddenly realized that he had successfully led the Qingdao convention to the rhythm of square dance. Different orthodoxies, different realms, and different age levels. They all had their own characteristics, but the rhythm was the same. This was the one and only little apple in the cultivation world. Tong Yan and the others watched all of this from afar. They felt that this was quite good. They had achieved their true goal of making everyone happy. This little E. If he has any dangerous thoughts, not only will he bring the Xianyuan sword sect into the abyss, but he will also bring us earth cultivators into the abyss. Then, are you willing to be crazy with him? White Lotus asked. Red Cherry was very sure. I'm very willing. But I don't know how long I can be crazy for. The others fell into deep thought. Yes, life was limited, but it was endless. What humans had to do was how to bloom more brilliance in their limited lives. Why were some people able to do all this so easily? Even gender couldn't stop them? Chapter 1918. Happiness had an end, and reality was the main theme. There were still some details to be dealt with at the Qingdao convention. Lu Xiaoyi quietly withdrew. He had done what he had to do, and it was time to leave. He had some things to study. When Extreme Yang and Old LV died, some things fell out of their bodies. In the cultivation world, power naturally belonged to the victor. No one had any objections, and no one felt that there was anything wrong with it. There weren't many things, only things that couldn't be stored in the storage ring. Among them were 3 heart plates. They were things he had once obtained from Linson. Many years had passed, and he had almost forgotten about it. As a result, the heart plates suddenly appeared in front of him again. 2 were full, and 1 was empty. He clearly remembered that the empty one fell from Old LV, and the 2 full ones fell from Extreme Yang. One of them contained a fragment of primal chaos, and the other contained a fragment of Taisu. This discovery made him have a new guess about the whole matter. The purpose of these 2 half-immortals coming here was obviously not pure. He asked indirectly and found out that the fragment that the female cultivator called Hua Screen obtained 100 years ago was the slaughter fragment. That's right. Taking Hua Screen back to get married was probably just an excuse. The real purpose of these 2 half-immortals should be the slaughter fragment that had already been digested. Since they weren't friends with Master Ho Hai, why did they have to make a move at the Kuandao convention? Who could stop the 2 of them if they acted in private? Then it was possible that they had a third purpose, which was to deliberately destroy the rhythm of the Kuandao convention. This was an action that killed 3 birds with 1 stone. Snatching people, snatching fragments, and destroying the convention. Who was the backer? Was it the backer of the exterior realm fragment trading market that Linson had mentioned? It probably wasn't that simple. Otherwise, why would they destroy the rhythm of the convention? The method of making the heart plates and the preparation for the Kuandao convention weren't things that ordinary half-immortals could do. It must be related to the higher-ups. Unfortunately, the 2 of them were dead, and no information was leaked. Moreover, he also knew that even if the 2 of them didn't die, it would be difficult for him to get anything from them. Death was actually safer for him. Because of Lord Linglong's guidance, he was experienced in how to handle the heart plates. He concealed the hollow plates, and the 2 heart plates that contained the Tao realm. He did not intend to let Xian Yuan keep this secret to himself. Monopolizing the secret also meant that one had to bear it alone. At the very least, he had to tell the 3 pure ones in Wushang that the 3 of them were becoming more and more inseparable. The future of the universe was unpredictable. It was better for everyone to embrace each other. This was his responsibility as the sect master, and he didn't need to discuss it with anyone else. Coincidentally, the Yang God army that had gone to Hung River had also quietly returned to the Earth domain in the past few days. He needed to meet Qing Yangzi, this old fellow. The 3 of them had to reach a certain common tone and set a practical and operational direction for the future of the 5th ring. A few days later, he returned to the dome and found a few Yang gods and Yen Dai, who had just returned. Taking out the heart plate, Lu Xiaoyi said seriously. That's about it. There are 2 fragments here, primal chaos and essence plainness. The 2 old fellows and I feel that they are not suitable to be preserved and should be collected as soon as possible. Firstly, to prevent people from tracking them, and secondly, to study the feasibility of this method. Senior sister, are you interested? Yen Dai shook her head. I don't want it. It's so disgusting that someone else has used it and understood it. Lu Xiaoyi looked at a few Yang God senior brothers. Senior brothers, what about you? Essence plainness may not be studied by anyone in Xianyuan, but as far as I know, there is still a market for primal chaos. The Yang Gods' reactions were exactly the same as Yen Dai's. They shook their heads like a rattle drum. Guandu said, I think it's more appropriate to leave this thing to the 3 pure ones and supreme ones. They have a more complete system in this regard and can withstand more torment. This is also a signal for us to express our unity. Supreme ones, the 3 pure ones and Xianyuan not only need to be united in theory, but also need to take a substantial step forward in practice. It's just 2 fragments of the Great Path. They can't defeat Xianyuan, nor can they glorify the 3 pure ones. Why bother? This was exactly what Lu Xiaoyi wanted to do, but he couldn't say it out loud. Instead, it should be decided by everyone. This was the difference between him and the Crow ancestor. He rarely acted first and reported later. Instead, he used different methods to guide everyone's thoughts. Only in this way could the interior be as united as steel. Even if he was gone one day and went far away, there would be a unified idea left in the dome. The heart plate incident had come to an end. Next, Guanshan would take over. Together with the supreme yang gods of the three pure ones, he would try the authenticity of the great wave fragments hidden in the heart plate through selected volunteers. Would it work? Would there be side effects? Would there be a secret door in the heart plate? This was a long process. Yan Dai was in a very good mood. Recently, good things came in pairs. The war was won, the Koan Dao convention went smoothly, and she even killed a half-immortal. Then, she found that something was sneakily following behind her. Come out. Do you think I can't find you? Lu Xiaoyi flashed out from behind with a smile. Senior sister, are you back to the cave residence? What a coincidence. Yan Dai looked at him vigilantly. Lu Xiaoyi, what do you want to do? This is the dome. Pay attention to your identity. Don't do things that don't suit your status. If word gets out, you won't be the only one who loses face, but also the face of the Xianyuan sword sect. Lu Xiaoyi shamelessly said, Senior sister, you've worked hard. Look at you, you've been working hard for many days and you're covered in dust. Now, you need a relaxing environment. Take a bath in the Huaqing pool, relax your muscles and bones, and get rid of the fatigue of many days. How could Yan Dai not understand what he meant? He was forcing her to fulfill her promise of the past. Lu Xiaoyi. Are you that impatient? Lu Xiaoyi was very serious. Of course. Because the longer this kind of thing is delayed, the faster someone will forget it. Yan Dai was unwilling, but Lu Xiaoyi was shameless. Thus, he pestered her all the way to Yan Dai's cave residence. Female cultivators were very particular about the choice of cave residence. It was a lonely peak where humans and beasts rarely came. Because it was the cave residence of the primordial soul swordsman now, there was a formation restriction, so no one dared to come close. There was a clear spring behind the mountain waste. The water was clear and it didn't freeze all year round, forming a curved pool called the Huaqing Pool. There were countless places like this in the dome. The reason Lu Xiaoyi paid attention to this place was only because of the owner of this place. Like Yan Cheng, Yan Dai didn't have any servants here. For people of their realm, what did they need people to wait on them? Yan Dai couldn't do anything. She thought that since she had made a promise, it wouldn't be good for her to publicly go back on her word. Originally, she wanted to slowly go back on her word as time passed, but she didn't expect the sect master to be so shameless. He really embarrassed Xianyuan. Lu Xiaoyi was very cautious. He looked around. Your cat isn't here, right? Don't try to fool me again. Yan Dai glared at him. Can't you tell if it's a human or a cat? What's that thing in your hand? Why are you being so mysterious? Lu Xiaoyi laughed mischievously. Junior brother, I specially picked a piece of locust for you. It's very fragrant and smooth. Chapter 1919. Lu Xiaoyi began his life of quiet cultivation. He experienced trivial things in his daily life and sharpened his temperament. This was also a part of cultivation. In a sense, this was true cultivation. There were many things that he had comprehended by chance. He needed to calm down and organize them. In terms of realms, he needed to be meticulous. He couldn't be sloppy like before. His upper realm did need the accumulation of great Tao, but the prerequisite was that he had such a foundation. It didn't mean that he only needed to accumulate enough great Tao. He still needed to put in effort into his own secrets. He had to speed up his advanced study of the Tao realm here because there were countless seniors and predecessors. there were also a large number of ancient records. It wasn't just limited to the dome, but also included the 3 pure ones and the supreme ones. If he went to discuss the Tao realm with others with his current identity, no one would reject him. Instead, they would be proud of themselves for being able to help the famous half-immortal Lu in the Tao realm. When one's realm reached a certain level, there wouldn't be so many restrictions. The great Tao would lead to the same destination. If Lu Xiaoyi really managed to climb up in the future, everyone would be proud of him. This was the breadth of mind of a cultivator, and also Lu Xiaoyi's character. It seemed that not everyone could do this. No one would doubt that he had learned the skills of other sects and sent them back to Shanyuan. If that was the case, such a cultivator would never take that step. Therefore, during this period of time, he went around to visit and learn about the Tao realm. It was very rare. With his experience of wandering around, there wouldn't be many opportunities like this in the future. The fusion of multiple Tao realms was also speeding up. This direction was more towards application. To put it bluntly, it was for battle. The other monsters had put in more effort than him in this aspect. First, there was the blind old man's art of prophecy, which involved fate, karma, and impermanence. Then, there was old LV at the Kuan-Dao convention, who became a lone star in the 3 Tao realms. On the Tao realm, he wasn't the only one who understood. The Tao fusion realm was a very important direction for everyone. The only thing that others lacked was that they didn't have enough Tao fragments. If they had enough, he might not be able to handle the Tao fusion realm. Just because there wasn't one now didn't mean that there really wasn't one. It was just that he hadn't encountered one yet. Everyone knew that after the change of era, the 36 innate Taos would be different from one another. Then, which innate Taos would be lucky enough to stand out from the rest? They could only keep trying. To be honest, this was also a shortcut to Tao, and everyone was looking for it. For example, the pure Yang realm of extreme Yang had a faint hint of Xiantian in it. This was definitely not a coincidence. It was just that extreme Yang was unlucky and didn't get to see the truth. Just in terms of Tao, Lu Xiaoyi had countless areas to work towards. The higher he went, the more he realized that he didn't understand, and the less time he had. This was the consequence of trying to master all 36 Taos. He was already very lucky in the first 12 Taos, but he didn't know how long this luck would last. The most pressing matter in front of him was the great Tao of Nirvana, but it was actually the hardest thing for him to do right now, because there was no Buddhism in the 5 rings. He did not have any Buddhist friends that he had a good relationship with. Was Marching Monk one of them? If he killed him and used the heart plate, on the contrary, he spent the least time on swordsmanship. In fact, as long as his Tao realm increased, the changes in his swordsmanship would naturally increase as well. It was a mutually beneficial relationship. During this period, there was another happy event in Shanyuan. Guangming had successfully broken through to the next realm, becoming the 8th sun god in Shanyuan. The dome was overjoyed and invited a few people to celebrate. However, the strange thing was that those primordial spirit swordsmen back then, such as Guan Yao, Lord Rui, Zhou Fan, Song Rong, and so on, did not have much envy. The reason was very simple. In fact, it could be seen from Guangming's self-description of the upper realm. King wanted to take a step forward, but who knew that I would become a sun god? I didn't want to either. This was the truth. If everyone had a choice, 9 out of 10 primordial spirits would choose to take a step forward to the interior heaven, rather than become a sun god. In the end, they had to take the path of decline that was destined to decline. However, the heavenly Tao liked to tease people like this. You chased the dog, but you caught the chicken. These primordial spirits did not look at Guangming with envy, but with schadenfreude. All of them took it as a warning and did not want to follow in his footsteps. Therefore, the so-called celebration was actually only among the middle-level and low-level cultivators who did not know the inside story. Fortunately, even if he was a sun god, he still had a chance to take a step forward. Because there was no longer the possibility of the previous two realm wars in the main world, everyone gradually loosened the restrictions on personnel control. For people like Guang Ming, it was necessary to go out and experience the world. There were many other people, not only Xian Yuan, but also the three pure ones. It was impossible for a cultivator to become a talent if he stayed in one place and did not go out to experience the wind and waves. Especially in the current stage of the great transformation of the universe, going out to experience the vastness of the universe and feeling the changes everywhere was the mood of every ambitious cultivator. There were also countless directions, in the direction of the floating anchor chain, in the direction of the Hung River, and in the direction of Zhou Xian's Heaven's Choice. In this regard, Lu Xiaoyi set the red line at 30%. For those who always like to show off outside, such as Guanshan Zhizhong, they should not even think of taking a step out. Opportunities should be given to the young. On this day, Lu Xiaoyi, who was in a deep meditative state, received a message from the heavenly eyes. The general meaning was that the universe was in chaos, and a small number of scum among the half-immortals were wreaking havoc in the main world. All heavenly eyes cultivators were required to raise their vigilance and be prepared at any time. In the near future, the heavenly eyes might make a relatively big move that involved a lot of people. These heavenly eyes cultivators were required to prepare for the urgent matters at hand, so as to avoid being caught unprepared when the order came. With this information, Lu Xiaoyi suddenly realized that Lord Lingwang might still have some say in the heaven's eye and had a certain amount of influence. The matter was obvious. This was a declaration of war against those half-immortals who used the heart compass to steal other people's daos. This also meant that the upper echelons were finally going to compete with each other. They were going to shed all pretenses and look for representatives to start the war. This time, the heavenly eyes still stood on the side of justice. This was also in line with the general tone of their conduct throughout history. There were some internal filth, but the Dafa had never been biased. Coincidentally, a few days after Lu Xiaoyi received the notice to be on standby, a guy who claimed to be an old acquaintance came to the dome. He really wasn't lying, it was really an old acquaintance. After the First Great War of the Eastern Sky Universe, it was as if old Taoist Wen Ji had disappeared from the face of the earth. What made Lu Xiaoyi surprised was that this old guy was actually also a primordial spirit cultivator. He didn't know how he managed to fool him. Chapter 1920. Little E, have you forgotten about this little old man now that you've gained power? Wen Ji still had that sage-like and sanctimonious appearance. There was no change in him at all. Time seemed to have stagnated around him. Lu Xiaoyi laughed and came over to support the old man. He led him to the front of the hall and sat down. He served tea and wine and was quite attentive. He retorted, "Old man, you're so heartless. Once you entered the fifth ring, you disappeared. You're living a carefree life, but you don't care about your old friends and fight to the death outside. All these years, I haven't heard from you at all. I even wanted to send people to dig a hole in the fifth ring to look for you. I didn't expect that the old saying that scourges live for 1,000 years would be true." Wen Ji laughed so hard that his eyes could not be seen. He also had a bad temper and felt very comfortable being scolded. Of course, it had to be someone he liked. "Thank you for your concern, little E. Didn't I come to find you? Well, I'm old and my legs aren't as nimble. I need to find a place to retire. I think the scenery here is good, but the people here are a little rough." The two of them joked and talked nonsense to express their feelings of reunion after a long separation. After a few rounds of tea, Wen Ji seemed to be casual. "Little E, how have you made progress in my faith these years?" Lu Xiaoyi was very embarrassed. I'm ashamed. Forgive me. I've been running for my life all these years, and it's not easy to survive. Ever since I established my faith, I haven't been able to comprehend other faiths. It's not that I didn't work hard, but in fact, the path of faith is too difficult to cultivate. Xiaoyi, I'm not a normal person. I don't expect too much. Wenji did not ask. The two of them chatted and talked about the old man's old profession again. Lu Xiaoyi was not polite. He never hid anything from his close friends. If he had a request, he would ask. Moreover, he asked with a clear conscience. Old man, you're now a primordial soul cultivator. Your cultivation realm has improved a lot. I think your ability is stronger. I remember that your best ability is to predict the Great Path Fragment. Then, can you help me predict where to find this Nirvana Great Path Fragment? I need it urgently, but I have no clue about its whereabouts. Hearing this, he was very dissatisfied. Brat, I just came here and you're already talking about conditions with me? Is this the rent I have to pay to live in the dome? Lu Xiaoyi said matter-of-factly, it's not because you're here. I've been wanting to ask you for a long time, but I need to know where you are. With your ability to manipulate heaven's secrets, I can't even sense your location. Who are the two of us? How could there be so many things to say? If I really don't say anything, you'll blame me for treating you like an outsider again. Wenzi stared at him, completely speechless. Fine. You're worthy of being called the Eastern Sky's #1 scoundrel. This old man can't out-talk you. Lu Xiaoyi smiled as he poured him a cup of tea. Old man, I actually wanted to ask you when Tai fell, but I couldn't find him. You also know that I have a hobby of collecting Tao fragments, just like how you like to collect faith. Wenji glanced at him. That's different. The Great Tao Fragment was purely a matter of luck. The power of faith can be achieved through one's own efforts. Isn't that the same thing? My previous prediction was only a prediction of the specific name and time of the falling fragment. But at that time, you all felt that this prediction was very mysterious. That's because your realm was not high enough. Now that you have the cultivation of a half-immortal, can you also predict which fragment will fall next? What time is it? Some things are like magic tricks in the mortal world. When exposed, they're worthless. It's not that this old man has great ability, but I can really predict heaven's secrets. Lu Xiaoyi was unmoved. He also didn't believe this old man's excuses. People who predict heaven's secrets were all like this. They obviously had this ability, but they would never admit it personally, nor would they brag and be proud of it. This was a necessary humble attitude under heaven's law. Of course, in the end, they would beat around the bush and say one or two sentences that divulged heaven's secrets. Firstly, it was to avoid heaven's punishment. Secondly, it was to show that it was not easy to predict and to gain more benefits. After dawdling for a long time and refusing several times, he finally gave in under Lu Xiaoyi's coaxing and pestering. This was actually a show for heaven's law. Look, I actually didn't want to say it. I was forced to. If there's karma, you can go find him. Don't blame me. Where does the Great Tao Fragment fly to? This is simply an unpredictable thing. It's not that the direction is difficult to determine, but that there are countless directions and no conclusion. It has been decades since Nirvana was broken. Most of them have merged into various celestial bodies and astronomical phenomena in the universe, and a few have been obtained by others. There are very few that can still float in the universe. So what I'm going to tell you next is not a prediction of heaven's secrets, but a judgment of an old cultivator because he has seen too much. Lu Xiaoyi raised his cup. Please say. Wenji subconsciously lowered his voice. Have you heard of the 2 Earths, 3 Roads, and 4 Symbols? Lu Xiaoyi nodded. You mean, you want me to open a new map? Wenji smiled. It's up to you. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just saying that there are more opportunities in these places, especially the 2 Earths and 3 Roads. The probability of cultivators appearing there is very low. The astronomical phenomena are especially unaffected by the Great Tao Fragment, so there will be remnants. Of course, it's not that the main world doesn't have any. It's purely a competition of luck. Who knows, maybe you'll run into it the next time you go out. Lu Xiaoyi appeared to be in a difficult position. I don't know the way to the 2 Earths and 3 roads. How can I go there? In the universe, there were countless wondrous places. Humans were a race that liked to categorize, so they also summed up many sayings. They were not absolute, and many of them were also subjective perceptions of human wishful thinking. For example, there was a saying called the 9 Wonders: Ancestral Dragon Land, Phoenix Nest, Qilin Cloud Sea, Peng Flying in the 9th Heaven, Juyan Blood Pool, Bayan Mountain, Zhuwai Abyss, Interior Sky, and Exterior Sky. It could be seen that this kind of induction was very far-fetched. In fact, it was just the gathering places of the 7 primordial beasts and the 2 gathering places of humans that didn't match. Besides, didn't the other primordial beast ancestral lands deserve a name? Not necessarily, right? The 9 wondrous places that Wen Shi and Qing Xian talked about was another version. Among them, the 4-symbol sky was obviously to make up the number, and the purpose was to make up the number 9. It was also the human cultivation world's deep admiration for the number 9. In fact, the wondrous places that they really wanted to express were the 2 Earths and 3 roads. There were many other classifications like the 9 wonders, the 9 extremes, the 9 blessed lands, and so on. You couldn't be too serious about it. Otherwise, once this map was opened, it would be endless and endless. In fact, it meant the same thing. There were countless strange places in the universe waiting for you to explore and pursue. Cultivators also constantly grew stronger in the process of exploration. There was no need to be obsessed with a certain number. It was like collecting cards in his previous life. Could you collect all of them? There must be 1 or 2 that you would never encounter, because there were none. Chapter 1921. I haven't been there either, but I have a friend who has been there once or twice, so I know a little about it. Wen Ji's words made Lu Xiaoyi laugh. Just like in his previous life, when he asked people for seeds in chat groups, they would usually say, "My friend also likes this, why don't you send one over?" In fact, it was not a friend, it was simply him. The road of no return is not far from the phoenix's nest. I can't tell you the specific way to enter, because 100 people have 100 ways to enter, and everyone is different. This is the so-called mystery of the strange land. Moreover, the phoenix race is most famous for their phoenix nirvana, being reborn from fire. So, it goes without saying that the nirvana great Tao fragment will be more inclined to fly to where it will fly. I can't say it's absolute, but this airspace is indeed worth exploring. Maybe there will be an unexpected surprise? The 2 of them talked about everything in the world. The old man was very knowledgeable, as if there was nothing he did not know, and there was no secret he did not know. Of course, this old man was very cunning. What he said was intentional. It was not that he was lying, but through selective words, he was subtly influencing the direction of others. Lu Xiaoyi had never seen through this old man. He was always shrouded in a layer of fog, so he could not figure out his roots until now. But it was definitely not simple. When he was yuanying, this old man appeared in the realm of yuanying. When he was a supreme, this old man quietly became a supreme as well. Now that he was a primordial spirit, this old man was still on equal footing with him. He was very curious. If he really became an immortal one day, would this old man appear in front of him as an immortal? It was very likely. Wen Shi found a place to settle down under the dome. He had a few thatched cottages and a vegetable field. He was very happy with himself. Lu Xiaoyi often visited him. He would not alienate a person because of his mysteriousness. Instead, he enjoyed it. He had to dig out the old man's treasures. This was just a game. The 2 foxes were testing each other in their daily lives to see who would be the first to lose their patience and give themselves away. It was also a kind of fun. The dome started to quiet down. Young high-level cultivators left in 2s and 3s to pursue their own paths after the sect lifted the ban on going out. Most of them were Lu Xiaoyi's group of disreputable friends, including Guangyao, Song Rong, Zhou Fan, and Yen Dai. The older generation would look after the home while the younger generation would go out to explore. Basically, every major faction was like this. This was for the sake of making the final dash before the epic changed. Tacitly, the baton began to be passed to the next generation. The tragedy of Liu Xiaoyi was that this time, he was treated as an old man. However, old people had the advantage of being old, and that was that they were experienced and knowledgeable. Taking advantage of this period of free time in the fifth ring, he first went to the Kuan Dao separation boundary. The high-level Kuan cultivators here were all very familiar with him because of his stunning dance at the Kuan Dao convention, and because he had an endless connection with this pure Kuan Dao sect, a connection that started when he was in the Zhuji phase. They were more like family, so they came here very casually. However, no matter how casual they could never return to the womanizing state of the past when they were in the Foundation establishment realm. He was no longer the original him. Han Yen. If I say I don't know much about this, you won't blame me, right? As the realm lord of this generation's Kuan Daoli realm, immortal Cheong Chan wasn't familiar with Liu Xiaoyi before. However, after the Kuan Dao convention, he became familiar with Liu Xiaoyi. He seemed to have known about Liu Xiaoyi's arrival and wasn't surprised to see him in front of him. Liu Xiaoyi was a little embarrassed. No. Because I don't know much about Han Yen. Cheong Chan smiled. But this is your home. You should have come back earlier to take a look. After thinking about it, he tried his best not to reveal anything. We actually don't know much about Han Yen. Because when she joined the Kuan Daoli realm, she was brought back by a supreme. For such a private action, we can't get to the bottom of it. I think you should understand. This supreme was my senior martial sister. She was quiet and didn't like to talk. She was just an ordinary Foundation establishment disciple, so no one would deliberately ask her anything. Therefore, if there was someone who knew about Han Yen's origin, it would be my senior martial sister. Unfortunately, my senior martial sister was unfortunately martyred in the First Fifth Ring War. She also took Han Yen's origin with her. This is why I said you should have come earlier. Liu Xiaoyi was silent. He knew what Cheong Chan said was true. They were all in the Foundation establishment realm at that time. How could a small Foundation establishment cultivator be worthy of the special attention of a major cultivator? Not to mention Han Yen, even someone as outstanding as her couldn't enter the field of vision of a major cultivator. At that time, he and Han Yen agreed to meet again after the Jin Dan. Now, it seemed that it was just a kind of good wish. For Foundation establishment cultivators, the Jin Dan seemed very distant. It was a kind of reflection after calming down the relationship between them. But now, it seemed that the two of them were very special. The Jin Dan agreement was really too short for them. It was so short that they couldn't figure out their own hearts. But now, he was already a half immortal. He should have the qualifications to solve some problems, right? He couldn't really delay these things until after he became an immortal. The path of no return that Wen Shi had told him about, the phoenix's nest, was actually very attractive to him. It wasn't entirely because of the so-called path of sin, but because he had an unbreakable connection with the phoenix in his life. Including Han Yen's true origin? Including the origin of the sparrows in his Naiwen? These were all things that he should figure out. Unfortunately, he was a step too late. Moreover, he faintly felt that even if that Supreme Kuan Dao really came to him when he was still alive, he might not be able to understand the truth. He was just holding on to a glimmer of hope. Cheong Chan saw his disappointment and wanted to help him, but he really didn't know anything about this, so he suggested, "Little E, why don't you go to the Peacock Palace and ask? They should know more than us humans. I have some friendship with a few palace masters of the Peacock Palace. I can write a letter for you." Liu Xiaoyi was startled. That's right, how could I forget about this? He got something from the peacock plume and determined that there might be some kind of relationship between him and that big bird. After that, his sea of consciousness had always been in the form of a big bird. The root of it all started from the peacock plume. Thank you for your reminder, senior sister. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten about it. There's no need for a letter. For their race, they will definitely say what they can say. If they can't say it, it's useless for anyone to plead for leniency. My relationship with them is not bad. I just don't know if my old face will be useful there. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.